of the Zangha Madre are also visible behind the Gold Line station in Chinatown. City Hall is the latest stop for a traveling exhibit remembering those who perished in the Holocaust. This exhibit comes to LA in time for Holocaust Remembrance Day, or Yom HaShoah. Tara Gibson reports.
Do not forget the survivors amongst us. Do not forget their victimizers. Do not forget those who stood by in the face of evil and did nothing.
In remembrance of the Holocaust, Rabbi Abraham Cooper delivers profound words to the audience at the Courage to Remember opening ceremony and reception.
Do not allow Holocaust history to be denied or rewritten.
The Courage to Remember exhibit has toured the world since 1998 in 6 continents and has made it here in Los Angeles once again, this time at the City Hall Bridge Gallery. This graphic picture, one of many on display, shows just what Jews endured during that time.
This is a time when we remember the Holocaust, Yom HaShoah, and we have an amazing display, a traveling display which has appeared all over the world but is rarely exhibited in Los Angeles.
Holocaust survivor Mike Popik says the Holocaust tore his family apart.
I was very sick. For 40 days I spent in the American Army Hospital, and after then when I came home, I found out that I have no parents, no brothers, no close relatives, and I'm an orphan at the age of 14.
Councilman Paul Koretz says the Courage to Remember is a vivid memory of the Jewish persecution, and it's an eye-opener for everyone to see.
And I'm very proud to have helped bring it here as we remember Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaShoah.
Popik says he's privileged to be recognized at such an impactful event.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor.
I'm Tara Gibson, reporting for LA This Week.
The Courage to Remember exhibit will be on display at the City Hall Bridge Gallery through May 9th. It's the latest in high-tech screening equipment to detect a nuclear threat, and the ports of LA and Long Beach are the most recent recipients. Anna Marco shows us how the choke point operation will make our ports a little safer.
It's full steam ahead for the maritime choke point operation at the Port of Los Angeles. A who's who list of the top law enforcement operations in the country are getting together to check for everything from dirty bombs to the slightest uptick in radiation levels.
Incoming boats and ships under 300 tons will be randomly screened with these non-intrusive systems.
This program allows our region the ability to stop or prevent an attack before it happens, with current detection capabilities and multi-agency collaboration.
The reason for all the radiation testing, the Department of Homeland Security's Domestic Nuclear Detection Office has awarded the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles money for training and equipment to detect radiological threats. The ports could get as much as $30 million and are the first to get the money.
So generally, if the exterior screening team receives a hit or they have a detection of any radiological sources on a vessel, they notify the interior team. The boat that's underway, it slows down. The interior team can come in a little bit closer and they'll get a little bit better reading on it. And if it's warranted, we will conduct a stop on that vessel.
There is no threat at the moment, but the extra gear and training will come in handy should any potential threats arise. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
Besides the LA Port Police, the LAPD, and the Long Beach Police Department, other agencies taking part include the Los Angeles Airport Police and the LA Fire Department. Driving around town, you've no doubt seen them on the curb, a dirty old mattress or sofa waiting for pickup by garbage trucks. But as Yana Kay tells us, a new pilot program will help rid you of those unwanted bulky items without the street side eyesore.
It's not that heavy, just kind of bulky.
Homeowner Gideon Krakow is more than happy to let these Department of Sanitation workers come inside his home and get rid of his unwanted stuff, like this old workbench.
Okay. So some of the stuff is right over here. Okay.
It's all part of a new pilot program where city workers can come inside your home to help you remove unwanted bulky items instead of you leaving them on the curb.
I think it's a great program. I think that one of the issues in our community, Council District 1, is some of the blight, people putting stuff on the street, mattresses, roofing materials, other things from their homes. So it's good now that they have an option for sanitation to come in the house, get that stuff off the streets.
And that's exactly the idea behind the service, to prevent unsightly and old items like this toilet from littering neighborhoods and sidewalks. Councilmember Gilbert Cedillo says cleaning up the streets in his district is a priority.
We will come and pick it up, like UPS, like FedEx, even like pizza delivery. We will come and pick it up.
Now, there are several guidelines you have to follow for an in-home pickup. For example, if you want an appliance removed, make sure to unplug it from the wall first to get it ready for crews. Sanitation workers say the program will also save you effort, especially those who can't lift heavy items.
Basically, to help the elderly and keep the city of LA clean.
Helping keep LA clean, one pickup at a time. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
Residents living in Council District 1 can call LA's Bureau of Sanitation at 1-800-773-2489 to schedule an in-home bulky item pickup Monday through Friday. The program could expand to other parts of the city in the near future. Crews begin the work of building a connector for the Expo and Green Lines. A mountain lion tests positive for rat poisoning, and a familiar face at City Hall steps into a new position. These stories and more in City Beat. Major construction kicked off on Metro's Crenshaw LAX transit project the first few days of May as crews begin to build underground stations 80 feet beneath Crenshaw. The bus stop located on the east side of Crenshaw Boulevard will be temporarily relocated to the southeast corner of Crenshaw and Stalker. The 8.5-mile Crenshaw LAX Transit Corridor project will connect the Expo and Green Lines. Construction on the stations is expected to take 4 years. Councilman Felipe Fuentes is helping the Department of Public Works get the word out about a significant increase in copper wire thefts from street lighting systems in certain valley communities. Fuentes and Public Works officials are asking residents to call 911 to report suspicious activity, such as unauthorized personnel working on lighting systems. They say city workers not only don orange vests and hard hats, but carry city identification. Vehicles affiliated with the Bureau of Street Lighting are also clearly marked as such. And outside companies hired by Public Works should also have their company names clearly marked on their vehicles. A UCLA wildlife biologist told a Los Angeles City Council panel that traces of rat poisons were found in blood drawn from the mountain lion named P22, possibly responsible for weakening the puma's immune system.
The hypothesis is that chronic exposure to rodenticides alters the immune function of cats, our wild cats like bobcats and mountain lions, and that increases their susceptibility to severe cases of mange.
He's just a representative of a larger issue that we're dealing with now, so I'm really glad it was brought to our attention.
Scientists captured P22 to treat him for the skin disease before releasing him back into the wild. Councilman Mitch O'Farrell has directed the city's Department of Recreation and Parks to report back to the committee on the use of rodenticides in city parks. The Los Angeles City Council has voted unanimously to appoint longtime city employee Sharon So to become the city's new chief legislative analyst. The appointment makes So the first woman and first person of color to hold the position of the city's top policy advisor. So currently serves in the office of the chief legislative analyst as an executive officer.
She has seen some of the worst and best city budgets in the last couple of years. She's been involved in every city budget process since 1987.
So will replace current chief legislative analyst Jerry Miller when he retires in late August. Miller received a standing ovation from council members during So's confirmation vote. It's now gotten a lot easier to gain access to one of Hollywood's biggest stars. We're talking, of course, about the Hollywood sign. Rasha Goel tells us about a new service that's treating visitors of the Hollywood sign like VIPs.
It's a popular hotspot to visit for both Angelenos and tourists. But getting to the Hollywood sign can be challenging, especially when it comes to traffic. But thanks to a new pilot program, you can bypass LA traffic for your close-up with the iconic sign.
This is going to be a 3-month promotional launch for providing a shuttle service up to a viewing area on Mount Hollywood Drive, looping to the Griffith Observatory, and then coming back down to the parking lot right here where we stand.
I'm very excited that we're taking this step because there's nothing like sharing our city. There's nothing like the tourist dollar that's so important to all of us. And to the people of Los Angeles, the economy.
The shuttle ride costs $7. Visitors can park at the Greek Theater and hop on or hop off at the Griffith Observatory or near the Hollywood sign. The entire experience lasts 30 to 35 minutes. Officials say it allows for easier access and is hassle-free for visitors.
Parking at Griffith Observatory is extraordinarily limited, and the fact that someone can avoid the hassles of weekend parking and ride a space vehicle.
Beechwood Canyon residents say they're hoping the shuttle service will help divert tourist traffic away from their neighborhood, which has been a popular throughway to the sign.
It's become kind of a safety issue because the streets are so narrow that they become quite overwhelmed by the number of people. And so I think, this will help just take some of that pressure off.
The shuttle service will be offered only on Saturdays and Sundays and will run from May through July. Children 2 and under ride free. In Hollywood, I'm Raja Goel for LA This Week.
Reservations for the shuttle must be made online at laparks.org. And in this week's list of things to do, the 30th Annual Asian Pacific Film Festival, a free family day at a local museum celebrating all things baseball, and a DIY event on Mother's Day. The 30th Annual Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival is taking place from May 1st through May 11th at various theater venues, including the Directors Guild of America at 7920 Sunset Boulevard, as well as the Japanese American National Museum in Little Tokyo at 100 North Central Avenue. Over 140 films will be screened during the festival. In the documentary The Road to Fame, the director follows 5 kids in China's Central Academy of Drama as they go through the 8-month training process. In the feature-length film, A Picture of You, estranged siblings from New York return to their mother's home in Pennsylvania following her death and discover the full life led by the woman they simply knew as Mom. For the full list of other films, times, and locations, go to AsianFilmFestLA.org. Also taking place at the Japanese American National Museum on Saturday, May 10th, is the Target Free Family Saturday with the theme, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. The family festival from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. is part of the museum's celebration of the new Dodgers Brotherhood of the Game exhibition. There is a free gallery tour as well as a screening of the 1950 film The Jackie Robinson Story, as well as baseball carnival games like the milk can toss for kids to enjoy. And there will also be a poetry reading in honor of Mother's Day. The museum is located at 100 North Central Avenue in Little Tokyo. For the full day's itinerary, go to janm.org. And speaking of Mother's Day, the Craft and Folk Art Museum at 5814 Wilshire Boulevard is hosting a Mother's Day event on Sunday, May 11th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. While the museum is closed for exhibition installation until May 17th, it is open for Mother's Day so you can spend the afternoon with your mom crafting paper flowers into a beautiful, long-lasting bouquet for her. While there is an admission fee, the day is free for moms. Go to cafam.org for details. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. Some of the world's most exotic endangered animals have found a new home at the LA Zoo. Gil Reyes is on safari at the new Rainforest of the Americas exhibit.
Making a big splash with zoo visitors are over 24 rare and endangered species from the jungles of Mexico, Central and South America. Among the new arrivals are these giant river otters. There are fewer than 5,000 of these creatures left in the world.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so cool in here.
The LA Zoo's newly opened Rainforests of the Americas exhibit also houses this 8,000-gallon viewing tank, home to these fearsome fish from the Amazon.
And I got to look back there. Kind of reminded me of my days in City Hall looking at those piranha. But there's some really great stars, and you ought to see them back there. Yeah.
That's right, real-life piranha swimming just beyond this glass. You have the red-bellied piranha and the pariah piranha. Now, at first glance, it would appear that the fish are swimming alongside the otter, which would be absolutely devastating. Good thing is there's glass separating the two animals.
Take a stroll through the rest of the 2.2-acre rainforest, and you'll find the harpy eagle, considered to be the largest and most powerful raptor in the Americas. The howler monkey, known for its short snout but keen sense of smell. And also the Central American tapir. Nocturnal by nature, this one took time out from its nap to say hello to us.
This is also the culmination of 15 years of work, $179 million that were provided by the citizens of Los Angeles through bond measures, through public money.
The team is public works, and the team is engineering, and the team is contract administration. And then there's the great coaches of GLAZA who raised the money. Give GLAZA a big hand. Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association.
The LA Zoo is open to visitors 7 days a week. In Griffith Park, Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
And coming soon to the zoo's rainforest, an all-new jaguar exhibit. It's expected to open around the holiday season. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Hello, I'm Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. I invite you to join our Spring Clean LA campaign to properly dispose of unwanted electronic and other household hazardous waste. For a safe center near you, please visit bpw.lacity.org.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Chatsworth, offering you a taste of New Orleans since 1986. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, May 6th. Want to welcome you to your Los Angeles City Council. This Please No Applause. This council meets on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m., and the public is welcome. Madam Clerk, I do believe we have a quorum. Could you please call the roll?
Blumenfeld, Bonin, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Huizar, Carrasco, Corcoran, Labange, Martinez, O'Farrell, Parks, Price, Wesson. 11 members present, a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Martinez moves, O'Farrell seconds. Next.
Committee to resolutions for approval.
Englander moves, Bonin seconds. That brings us where? To our pledge?
Yes, Mr. President.
If we could all rise for the flag salute led today by Mr. Labange.
Thank you, but please rise and place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we go through the agenda?
Yes. First, Mr. President, there is a request to refer item 20 to the Rules and Elections and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, and also to continue item 22 to May 20th.
Okay, so without objection on both of those issues. And please continue.
Items 1 through 12 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay, specials, members 1 through 12. Mr. Buscaino.
6, please. 6.
6 for Mr. Buscaino. Let's prepare to vote on the other items. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Next section, Mr. Buscaino.
Yes, sir. Items 3 and 4, port-related items, forthwith, please. 3 and 4.
Without objection, forthwith on 3 and 4. Next section.
Items 13 through 26 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, those items are now before this body. Mr. O'Farrell and...
Mr. President, item 23 called special for Bernard Parks.
Okay, 23. Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Labange.
19 special for Mr. Krikorian.
19?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have cards?
Cards on items 13, 15, 17, 18, 19, 24, 25, and 26.
Okay, so are there any items left for us to vote on at this time?
Yes, items 16 and 21.
Then we shall do that. On those two items, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
The next section.
On the supplemental agenda, item 27 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, that item's before us. Mr. Englander?
I have a technical correction on 27 that's being circulated.
Okay, so what we'll do, let's hold 27 while the technical change is being submitted.
And Mr. President, just for the record, for item number 2, which is an ordinance, that will be held over for 1 week if not reconsidered.
Okay, in the event that we wind up with 12 members, I'm optimistic that we will. Remind me and we'll take it up at that time. So that brings us where?
Mr. President, that brings council to presentations or items called special.
Mr. Labange, would you be ready to begin? Well, then, Mr. Labange, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. On this day, we're going to honor Stephen Rosenthal and Mark Cohen, recipients of the 18th Annual California Lawyers Association of the Year Award. These two young men have been honored by their profession as being named the Outstanding Lawyers of the Year. The Clay Awards recognize attorneys who achieve greatness and have significant impact on the state of California. Stephen Rosenthal and Mark Cohen represent the California State Controller John Chang in recovering billions of dollars of unpaid life insurance and annuity proceeds from insurance companies. Mark Cohen has over 35 years of experience in bankruptcy law, corporate reorganization and currently represents the California State Controller in disputes, as I mentioned. Also, he works with the city of San Bernardino on their challenges they have and other issues related to all things that people need help in. Mark is a very superman and a super lawyer. Stephen Rosenthal serves as a partner and chair of K. Schroller LLP in Washington, D.C. In addition to representing private companies in litigation, he also represents entities such as the City of Los Angeles, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and the California State Controller. It's a great opportunity to recognize people when they're honored by their profession, when they're named that person of the year. So it's my honor here, Stephen S. Rosenthal, to salute you on that special recognition.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And it's extremely special for me, for Mark Cohen, to recognize you, because not only you are Lawyer of the Year, you're a great constituent. Your wife is a great constituent, Lynn Cohen. You love the fire department in the city of Los Angeles, and you do many, many extra great things. Mark Cohen, congratulations.
Thank you, Tom.
Stephen, say a few words. Okay. And then Mark.
This is a great honor for me. As Councilman Labange has said, I've worked for the city of Los Angeles as well, working with the city attorney for many years. My heart is really in this city. I love this city, and nothing could make me happier than to have received this honor from the city I've worked with for so many years. Thank you very much, members of the City Council.
Thank you, sir, and congratulations. Thank you, Congressman Labange.
You're welcome there. Senator.
Senator, okay.
I want to thank my council member, Tom Labange, in introducing us. My wife, Lynn, and I, who many of you know, she was Tom's deputy for some 8 years, got involved with Tom when he was a deputy to the late and great John Ferraro. And Tom, as well as my wife, really inspired me to a good portion of my life to be spent in public service. First with the Miracle Mile Civic Coalition, and the last 8 or 9 years as chair of the First In Fire Foundation, which connects local Los Angeles citizens with the fire stations that they serve. The representation the last few years of the City of Los Angeles, along with Steve, has been terrific, and the last 5 years representing the State Controller in recovering, as Tom said, hundreds of millions of dollars for beneficiaries in California and for the state of California, and across the country, over $2 billion has been a continuation of a professional life geared towards public service. So thank you very, very much, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you, members. Thank you very much. Congratulations on behalf of the mayor and the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Senator Labange. Okay, I'm going to take up just a few items before we get to the 2020 report. Item 13, John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or blogging at J. Walsh Confidential, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. This, again, is the REAP program. And here again, we have today only two bad boy landlords, or bad girl landlords, one at West Lilac Terrace, the other at West Cagle Canyon Street. They have their building, their units are not up to code, and they're not getting the rent anymore. It's being paid by the tenants to you. And I say to everybody out there, if your apartment's not up to code, come here, and your landlord will not get the rent. It will come here. HollywoodHighlands.org. Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. No applause, please. Okay, let's prepare to vote on that item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, we're going to go to item 15. Mr. Herman. Item 15.
My time went so quick. I wish I had Jesse's girl. This is a relative to the installation of the name of Rick Springfield on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I wish I had Jesse's girl. Where can I find a woman like that? And I still got 37
Your
seconds.
singing's disruptive, Mr. Herman.
Oh, my God. Everything we do here is disruptive.
No, just speak to the item.
I give up. Rick Springfield, welcome to Hollywood.
Mr. Akala.
I think I'm beginning to understand City Hall. When I'm done, I'm supposed to say, hold my time. Rick Springfield, a great songwriter. Enjoyed him as a teenager, or I was a little older, but, you know, I was just listening to others like Neil Young and people like that. We were all about revolution. I don't know what the hell happened. City Hall keeps taking over and over and over. Occupy LA went by.
Stay to the item, please.
The
Mr.
item
Akala.
is people.
Rick Springsteen and Hollywood
Right. He's
Walk.
getting a star for talking about things that are more realistic than what you're giving us. So, Rick Springfield, congratulations. Hold my time. See? 103.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's prepare to vote on that item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Madam Clerk, we now have 13 members. What item do I need to reconsider, and let's vote on it and move it on its way?
Item number 2.
Okay, so now we're going to vote on reconsideration of item 2. This vote is reconsideration. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Now we're going to vote on the item itself. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All righty. Go to item 17, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Akala, item 17.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. The first time I saw the Hollywood Walk of Fame, I was a summer school student at UCLA. That was 1966. You could eat off it. Now it's the shame of LA. It's filthy, it's broken down, and I'm putting pictures of the shame of LA, Walk of Shame, on our website, HollywoodHighlands.org. Tavis Smiley is the first unsuccessful LA City Council candidate to get a star. And incidentally, you can have a star. Just put the star down there. Just if you go in front of Wells Fargo on right there on Vine, you'll see someone named Vic Mensa, M-E-N-S-A. He has defaced the star, and now it's Vic Mensa's star. So if you want a star, I'll get you a star. Mr. Cantor, you can have a star. Anybody can have a star. Just put it up there. They don't give a damn. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Mr. Akala.
He's absolutely right. When I first went homeless, thanks to your stupid system, I wound up in Hollywood. And guess what? A lot of those stars, you don't even know who the hell they are. And who cares? See? What makes a difference is if we create programs to house everybody. Not just to...
Stay on the item.
Yeah, I know.
Housing has nothing to do with the item.
Well, yeah, the stars on Hollywood Boulevard, kind of a vacant publicity bullshit. Hold my time.
Thank you. Let's prepare. Let's prepare to vote. Let's open up the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right. Let's. Okay, let's quickly do item 25. Mr. Walsh, this is you, held special by you. Item 25, if you please come forward.
This is HollywoodHighlands.org. This is about the big fight between Parks and over the fireworks and Price. I can't believe how nasty Parks has been. All I know is that Mr. Price actually closed a liquor store in his neighborhood, Times Square Liquor. You're the only one that does that because it's the same thing that we saw with the Americans coming in here, the white man, and selling liquor to the
Stay
Native
on the
Americans.
item, Mr. Walsh.
I'm telling you right now that this $60,000, it is your fireworks. It is yours. I don't know where Mr. Parks is now, but 100% this incredible fight over who gets to run the Coliseum fireworks was shameful.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, let's prepare to vote on that item. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Forthwith per Mr. Labange. All right, now we'll go to item. You ready? We'll go to item 26. I have some cards, Mr. Cantor and the rest of the commissioners on that item. I think we should take those up first, and then you guys can come to the center table, or you can come to the center table now. Good morning. All right, so what we want to do, I have some cards, starting off with Maria Elena and Gary Tobin. Do you have a mic there? Since the two of you are seated next to one another, you can share. So why don't we start off with Maria Elena Durazo?
Okay.
Good to see you.
Good morning. President Herb Wesson and members of the City Council. I'm here basically to support the efforts of the report and the recommendations of the 2020 Commission. I am not a member of the Commission, but I was asked and invited to make a presentation to the Commission. I was glad to see that the members of the Commission were so balanced and really representing all interest in Los Angeles, including labor, so I applaud them for including the voice of labor as well. And it's a tough job to identify the challenges facing our communities. What I see is what they've come up with is basically a starting point, and it challenges us to think big. I did not agree with everything in this report, but I find that to be okay because the things that are recommended, first of all, the challenges that were made to us, and some of the recommendations think big, and they all ask us to set aside the way we've usually been doing business every single day. We all get caught up in the day-to-day struggles, the day-to-day crisis, and very, very rarely do we stand back and say, we're going to approach this in the way that is much bigger than us and looks at things in a much bigger way to solve. So from that point of view, I applaud the Commission's efforts. I support that they be taken seriously by this City Council. And as their report says, the time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tobin.
President Wesson and members of the Council, I would simply like to encourage all of us to not be defensive when we read this report and when we discuss this report. Our city has been in existence for a long time, and the challenges we face didn't happen overnight. No one on this council can claim responsibility for those challenges. No one in the city can claim responsibility for all those challenges, but together we have a responsibility to address them, and address them in a new way that we haven't in the past. Like Maria Elena, the Chamber does not agree with all the recommendations, but that doesn't mean that they're not worthy of discussion. We do agree that the challenges facing our community are significant, and we should address them. And we thank you very much for the time the Council is going to spend on this, and we especially thank the members of the Commission and all those who gave them information during their process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. Jay Handel, followed by Donna Pearman. Jay, I saw you earlier. So, Donna, if you're here, why don't you just come up and we'll look for Mr. Handel.
This is Donna Perriman. I hope when the commission that you take the San Fernando Valley very seriously, because it seems to be a lot of times that only the downtown is looked at, and we like to be able to have our right to speak. So I'd like to be able, the commissioner, to look into that fact that we have to come all the way downtown to be able to speak. So, but there's a lot of areas in the valley that's very vast, a lot of different problems that the valley specifically have, and I would like to be able to, for you to look at it and specifically see for all of Los Angeles the things that have to be done and not just a little area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman, followed by Mr. Walsh, and then another call for Jay Handel. Please come forward. Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, at this horseshoe, it is to my deepest understanding that I do not agree, but I wish to be defensive for the challenges for what this city has denied the public interest. And how did we address it? We continue to have the largest poverty issues here in Los Angeles. Discrimination in housing continues to be the problem. Loyalty for employment continues to be the problem. People like me don't need houses. We lost more. We lost our displacement and the gentrification caused by this city. We lost belief in humanity, in government, in justice, in creative art. And without these, I cannot begin a new way of looking at Los Angeles, personally and beyond. For your constituents deserve the right, followed by the Brown Act, that we are not disruptive, but we are creative in addressing the issues that are the most important to this city. And that's all of you Angelenos. Every person in Los Angeles has a right not to be discriminated against. For that's the reason why I do my reading under the Edward R. Roybal history here, to remind all of you in Los Angeles that I too am a humanitarian. I, too, represent justice. So keep in mind, Mr. Cantor, when you walk away from this horseshoe, to remind the 15 councilmen how they left this city and continue to leave this city. It is your responsibility and accountability to respond to the needs of every human being in Los Angeles, whether they're homeless and whether they just moved in a day ago.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Walsh, followed by Mr. Handel.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. Look at the difference. I was here the first time you showed up with your first report. Cameras all over, news cameras. Today, no news cameras. Why? Because the report, the second report, is a joke. You're not going to be covered in the media. This is called self-reform. The city's going to reform itself. Yeah, Boris Yeltsin, the Russian Premier Putin, Vladimir Putin, is going to reform himself on Ukraine. It is impossible. Reforming yourself is like tickling yourself. You can't do it. Your second report laid a gigantic egg, and the egg is beginning to stink. Even Moody's service that governs the bond rating said that your plan for the DWP was a joke, and if this city were to implement the plan, what would Moody's do? It would downgrade the bond rating for the entire city and cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. So in other words, your plan isn't just worthless. Your plan is potentially harmful. That's why yes, we can, no, yes, we can. But we do need you, Mickey Cantor. We want you to put together a bid for the city to buy the Clippers. That's where you belong. And as far as this report is concerned, I mean, you should all be wearing masks. I mean, you should be hiding your face, this entire thing. And what is the answer to everything? Create a commission. And who's going to put the commission in? Who's going to appoint them? The mayor and the city council. It's worthless. I'm looking forward to falling asleep during your slideshow. We'll never see you again at Chambers. HollywoodHighlands.org.
No applause. It's disruptive. Mr. Handel.
Good morning, Jay Handel. I'm co-chair of the Budget Advocates. I stopped by today because I wanted to thank the Commission for the work they did. Being someone who works with 36 people on a pretty much annual basis right now, looking at budget, looking at the issues in our city, looking at not just what's the problems, but what's the solutions. You know, I always want to be able to come and support the organizations, the commissions that are put together to try and help make this a better city. And what I would like to do, realizing that the commission now is pretty much sunsetted from what I understand, is I would urge those on this commission to work with the budget advocates moving forward, because we don't stop. We continue, and annually we re-elect and we bring in new people. And we've got our group, we've got a brain trust here that was put together by the president of the council, and I think now's the time for us to all work together as opposed to working separately. And I would urge you guys to work with us to look at two specific instances from the beginning. One is pension reform and putting together a pension reform committee that is an unbiased committee that can make recommendations to everybody to try and fix the problem. And the other is truly a live within your means type of initiative to bring this city into balance once and for all, so that we can then look at how do we create jobs, how do we create a better economy, how do we create a better city for the people of this city. So again, I thank you as the Budget Advocates co-chair for the work you've done, and I would urge you all to work with us moving forward on trying to implement some of the changes that we all need to be made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a Greg Krikorian? If you please come forward.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Greg Krikorian, president of the Valley Economic Alliance, and we wholeheartedly support the efforts of the 2020 Commission. I think you look at all United States, it comes time to where, the grease has hit the pan. I hate to say in layman's terms, we have to really look at how we could really identify the city of Los Angeles and how we can refocus things. This is really a great effort. But also, recently, since I'm a big NFL fan, I saw the letter from Eric Garcetti to Mr. Goodell to pitch to get the NFL draft here next year at the Kennedy Station in Los Angeles. We got to help our city. And we're all about the Valley Economic Alliance, helping bring in jobs, help get our economy back together as one. And it comes together a reality of planning. And the recent motion that Nuri pushed with looking at restructuring some of the businesses in San Fernando Valley, I think it's a great move because we got to focus on things and work together. The key thing here is the 2020 Commission, the team that they put this effort together, they help identify some areas. And even if you pick specific things that you could tackle as a council and as a team to help guide us, you know, we look at our nation, we're only 238 years old in reality. A lot of the voters entrusted all of you, and many of you council members, we work with all of you in many ways. And we trust that you're going to make the right decision to help our businesses grow. I mean, every day, you know, recently I had 2 businesses in the valley get approached by the state of Washington to leave our valley and bring 80 jobs. I'm tired of people picketing our city, taking business out of our city. We at the Valley Economic Alliance is going to work with the LA City Council. We'll work with Eric Garcetti and his team to protect the valley. And this LA 2020 Commission gives a commitment to businesses that the City Hall is going to be financially responsible and prudent with the dollars. And I trust all of you that you're going to make the right decision. I just want you to know, on behalf of the Valley Economic Alliance and all of our partners, we're firmly behind Eric Garcetti and all the council members' initiative. LA rocks. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends general public comment on that item. If you had a card and didn't submit it, you know I don't take cards after the public comment has begun. So at this point, public comment on this item is over. Mr. Cantor and the other commissioners, thank you for your work. Thank you for coming today. And with that said, Mr. Cantor, I'll let you begin your presentation, and then we'll have council members ask questions or, you know, whatever they feel comfortable with for today. Go right ahead.
Thank you, President Wesson, very much. I think I'm grateful to you for asking me to do this. It's been about a year, and what I've enjoyed most, frankly, is the people on this commission. They've been leaders in our community for years. They have contributed mightily to us, and I'm very proud to be part of this group. This report is not perfect. Let me make that clear. We don't pretend that it is, but we hope we don't ignore it. Not ignore it. Each item could be debated and should be. I really believe that, and maybe none will be adopted as is. That's okay, but we need to move in the direction of change. We need to embrace it. We shouldn't be afraid of change. I know how big organizations work. I've headed them in the past. It's difficult, but this council has 8 new members. We have a new mayor. We have a new city attorney. We have a new controller. Folks, we can do things here in LA. We really can. So it's up to all of you to come up maybe with better ideas, and I hope so. We are not married to any one of these, although we will debate them and advocate them. Let's move forward. That's all we're saying. This commission, as you all know, was very diverse. I just want to first cite and thank Gary Tobin and Maria Elena Durazo for being here. We've tried to cover the spectrum ideologically in the city and philosophically and by party. We had Republicans and Democrats. We had every ethnic group represented. We had business people. We had people running nonprofits. We tried to make sure this was as diverse as possible to cover all the bases. We had 1 staff member. We didn't overdo it. 1 staff member. The rest were volunteers, and terrific volunteers. This report is unanimous. We didn't just get consensus. We were able to receive unanimity, and I think that's important given who's on this commission. But let me make a brief comment President Wesson about what's happening in the city. This council, the mayor, I saw Miguel Santana earlier. I don't know where he is. The CAO.
Right behind you.
The city attorney, controller have made great progress. You've done it in pensions in terms of the new tiers. You've done it with taking a certain percentage of compensation and lowering compensation. You've held employment down, so you've been fiscally responsible. And I think you deserve tremendous credit for that. Your direction is correct. The question now is not what's happening today. We're talking about the future. Let's not argue. We look at this council and say, and the mayor and say, go for it. You're doing it. The mayor is very strong on technology, on performance-based budgeting. We come out for that. We're for it. We want him to be successful in it. But we think there are other things that have to be done as well. Let me make it clear before I call on Austin Buettner, who's been a great partner of all of us in this and has been tremendous to work with. Under transparency and accountability, for instance, we didn't just make this up. We looked at the CLA in Sacramento. We looked at the CBO in Washington, the budget office in Washington. We looked at what New York has done. We looked at what Chicago has done. We didn't pull this out of thin air. The same with the DWP. We can argue about whether we should have a Public Utilities Commission with the DWP. It's a good argument. We should have that argument. Maybe we can have it here today. But we didn't just we looked at Jacksonville, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We looked at Sacramento. We looked at San Francisco. We looked at Knoxville, Tennessee, all of whom have done some form of what we're talking about here today. So this didn't just come out. There have been, in fact, experiments done across the country that we should take advantage of in order to make a decision, not just dismiss it because it's tough to do. On the ports, we didn't pull that out of thin air. Look what Vancouver has done in merging. Look what New York and New Jersey have done. Look what Seattle has done. And we have a widened Panama Canal we have to look at, which is a real competitor. We shouldn't be competing with each other. Austin will talk about that. Our competition is somewhere else. We've lost 5% of our market share in the country, 5%. And Austin will say that is a huge impact on employment and on revenues. Let me end by this. Let's just agree we can make change. Let's just at least agree on that today, that we can listen to each other and really have a good exchange of ideas based upon not just what we said, but based upon your experience. We're not cheerleaders. People have criticized us for being too negative. We weren't asked to be cheerleaders here. We're asked to be as realistic as possible, give you ideas, hopefully work with you in the future as individuals, and try to get something done. Thank you. Austin?
No, please, the applause is a disruption, so please stop.
I know it's a disruption, but do I enjoy that?
I bet you do. Mr. Buettner.
Thank you, Council President Wesson. As you listen to what Mr. Cantor and I have to say, I ask each of you to consider the following question as you read the report, as you consider the recommendations. Is our community better served by the status quo or the recommendation we've made? And I think that's an interesting approach to think about as you read and review the report. There are three main areas: transparency and accountability, the budget, and jobs. It's your good fortune and mine. I'm not going to read you the whole report, nor am I going to cite everything that we recommend. It's 20 pages. It's not appropriate. So what I've chosen to do is highlight three concrete recommendations we've made, which are all within the purview of this council to act on, which will all change the direction and improve life for all Angelenos and many throughout our community. The first is we recommend to hold municipal elections, meaning city elections, on the same cycle as state and federal. It will dramatically expand the number of voters, increase the diversity of our voters, and lessen the impact and interests of special interests on our local elections. I'll cite a few figures. Last May, we had a mayoral election. 23% of eligible voters voted, about 400,000 voters. I will contrast that with the last general San Diego mayoral election, where they had 70% of their voters vote. Now, 70% in Los Angeles would mean we'd go from 400,000 voters to 1.2 million. We would triple the number of voters. Let's look at what happened in November 2012 in the presidential election. More than half of Angelenos turned out to vote. More than half. We can double the number of voters. We can take from 415,000 to more than 900,000 voters. Double participation, increase diversity, lessen the impact of special interests by moving our election to the same cycle, which, by the way, San Diego, San Jose, and San Francisco already do. A concrete recommendation within the power of this council to act. The second is we need to emphasize regional collaboration in job creation. We touched on several examples, the port which Mickey spoke of. I'm going to focus on creating a regional tourism authority. It strikes me as more than ironic that Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, and Santa Monica all compete for the same international tourists. None of them do a good job collaborating with the cultural institutions, from the California African American Museum to the Getty, and they don't collaborate with the two biggest draws of tourists in our region, Disney and Universal Studios. How do you measure tourism? Lots of different numbers floating around. We've chosen to look at the customs data. When every passenger gets off an airplane in this country from overseas, they have to designate themselves as a tourist by law. Self-identified, so not perfect, but not perfect throughout the country. Okay, that eliminates a certain set of tourists to our region, but I don't think a tourist visiting from Riverside going to the beach in Santa Monica and buying a hot dog makes that big an impact. An international tourist spends almost $5,000 when they visit here. Let's look at some simple data. In Los Angeles, in the year 2000, we had about 3.5 million overseas visitors according to the customs data. New York had 5.8 million overseas visitors. Let's take the clock through some unfortunate times, 9/11 and the rebound. New York today has more than 9 million visitors. Los Angeles, the same, 3.5 million. They've almost doubled. We're at that same level. Customs data, impartial throughout, publicly available. What's different? In 2006, New York, under the leadership of Mayor Bloomberg, said we're not approaching this right. We have more talent outside of City Hall than we do inside of City Hall when it comes to attracting tourists. There are professional institutions ranging from their museums, their cultural institutions, their private sector employers who do this for a living. Let's collaborate with them. He went to Madison Avenue, a source of great marketing talent, which we have the same great marketing talent in Los Angeles, tapped leadership from Madison Avenue, created a new entity, and they've doubled. Hawaii faced the same challenge we do when the outer islands became a popular tourist destination. The governor sat everybody down and said, we're not going to win with Oahu competing against Maui. We're going to win promoting Hawaii. They changed their approach. They have also doubled tourists in that same time frame. It's time for us to take what we have and make it better. We don't need to create a new bureaucracy. We can take the foundations that MTA has shown can be done for regional collaboration. Let's take LA Inc., create a new vehicle, invite Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and the other major draws in our region to participate alongside of us. Each of those municipalities, as does the City of Los Angeles, budget money. They all take a portion of the same TOT and commit it to trying to attract tourists. Let's collaborate as a region and grow the pie. I challenge anyone in this chambers or outside these chambers to find that tourist from China who goes to Beverly Hills and can draw the border with Los Angeles, or visits Venice and can distinguish between the sand in Venice along the boardwalk and the sand in Santa Monica. Can't be done. We are one region. We'll be more successful if we grow the pie. Collaborating on regional tourism can be done. We have the dollars already being spent. We have the structures. We have the models. It just takes leadership to go out and do it. The third concrete recommendation may be misperceived. It is not intended as a challenge to anyone in this chamber. We're recommending to create an Office of Transparency and Accountability. As Mickey Cantor noted, the purpose of this, any well-functioning democracy, the more transparent and accountable those elected are, the better their relationship, the better connection they have with voters, the more able they are to make tough choices, because those same voters will understand why those tough choices are being made. Examples abound in this country. Most large, complex governmental institutions have an oversight body independent of that body. Congress has the Congressional Budget Office with a storied tradition of independence. The state has the legislative analyst who, even recently in Hollywood issues, has stepped away from a governor and said, these are a different set of facts. New York has an independent budget office. Chicago has an independent budget office. It will serve those well in this chamber to have the same effort here. We laud and respect the effort of the current administration and the past administration and the team they've assembled, the CAO, the CLA, and the incoming CLA. They do a good job. They support those in office, but they work according to the direction of those in office. We need to make sure the facts are available to all of us. Where does an ordinary citizen go to understand police deployment levels, fire response times, what's happening with our sidewalks, library hours, 9/11 calls? Where does an ordinary citizen go to see how their tax dollars are spent? I'll put this Office of Transparency in the context of this year's budget and just ask a few questions. And please don't take my questions as pejorative. They're just questions because I've studied the information provided by all of the different city entities, and I still have questions. That shouldn't be the case. It should be clear the judgments and the tough choices that those in this chamber have to make. On public safety, the current practice has been to create an overtime bank. Instead of being paid currently for the overtime they work, officers get an IOU. The bill comes due later. The current contract provides for 800 hours per individual, and that amount would drop to 150 hours in July 1st of this year. That has an impact. The city's accrued more than $100 million of liability for past work that hasn't yet been paid to those who do the work. It also has an impact on effective deployment. Chief Beck has been quoted publicly as saying at any point in time, it diminishes the effective deployment in our police department by 400 to 700 officers. Has an impact. My question's simple. What is going to happen with the existing bank? When and how will the money be paid? And what impact will that have on effective deployment levels? Relatively straightforward question. My hope would be this organization can provide that information. In the fire department, it's been well chronicled that emergency response times have risen fairly dramatically in the last several years. What plans are in place to address this? What performance goals or measures have been established, and how can an ordinary citizen see if those are being met? The reserve fund, or as Governor Brown refers to it, a rainy day fund. Current reserves are almost 8%, about $400 million. I laud the effort of this council and prior council to establish that rainy day fund. But the budget shows almost $130 million being used to fund the deficit, taking the reserve to a little bit more than 5%. Governor Brown is working very publicly to establish a goal of 10% at the state level for reserves. The question's fairly straightforward. Is this good policy for Los Angeles to dip into reserves? How is that sustainable? And 5% versus the state's 10%, how do we draw such a large and sharp difference? Street repairs. The proposed budget has a goal of 2,400 miles of resurfacing. The proposed budget has money for 2,200 miles. What's the plan? How will the additional miles be paved without money to do so? Sidewalks. $10 million was unspent this year. $10 million will be proposed for next year. The problem has been estimated at $1.5 billion, not $10 million. This is a good example why an Office of Transparency and Accountability is needed. The city's been responsible for these same sidewalk repairs now for many, many years. It does not appear much has been done to address these issues. And City Hall may be proposing, or considering at least, a tax increase to address the issue. The Office of Transparency and Accountability might have raised this issue not just this year, but last year or 10 years ago, so we as a community could have had the discussion, should we be putting away money, should we be investing in those same street repairs, as opposed to the problems growing to the size they are. This transparency and accountability is the foundation of establishing trust with the voter and the community. City Hall has already taken a small step in this direction with the creation of a ratepayer advocate. Our proposal is fairly straightforward. Create one for City Hall as a whole to look at the budget and other practices within City Hall. And I ask you, how can one argue that more transparency and accountability for everything City Hall does is not a good thing? Now, neither Mickey and I do this for a living, nor our other commission members. We volunteered. So our time and our service to you, Council President Wesson, is almost done. We are not an advocacy organization. Our specific recommendation to take this forward would be to ask either the CLA or the CAO or those professionals in your staff who look at things like this very professionally to take the banner, to take the baton from us and give them a hard look, report back to this chamber on each of these recommendations. And as Mickey said, we have no pride of authorship, but we do believe this is a time to act. This is a time to change and improve Los Angeles for everybody in our community. Thank you again for considering our report, and we look forward to your comments and questions.
Thank you. Thank you. No applause. Thank you very much. Again, all of you, you did a great job. I know it was challenging, and it's greatly appreciated. Before I call the other members on the council, I want to indicate that it is my intention to make sure there's further conversations where it relates to these recommendations. Just off at the top of my head, I can see that I would defer pieces of this report to various committees, like Mr. Fuentes, where it relates to E&E, and Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Price, where it relates to economic development. So in my mind, I'm formulating how we will move forward, and I want to assure you that these will be properly vetted. And off of the top of my head, I see some of these that we should be able to move with some haste. So with that said, just so that you know what my plan is, if the members are supportive of it, that's the way I intend on proceeding. But I want to start off with Mr. Labange as the first speaker in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your time and your thoughts and your ideas. Let's get in a room, just like a coach, and see if these plays work. And if they work, Los Angeles wins. The city was founded, and the three powerful things that made it go economically: first, water and power; second, the Port of Los Angeles; third, Los Angeles International Airport. All those are very important components. Steve Erie, a professor, wrote deeply about that. And we all should look at, he's a professor from the University of California, San Diego, very important about our history. You look back at the 1925 charter that stayed for a long time. Where I sit, I did not realize this. Who stood here before me was a fellow named Robert Burns. Before that was a fellow named Harold Henry. Before that was the late, great John Ferraro. Before that was me. Since 1925, 4 people were the 4th District. Okay, it's an interesting component on that. Neighborhoods make a difference in being able to balance it out. Just a couple things right off the top of the head. I would favor consolidation elections if the judges weren't on it, and I hope I never have to see a judge. But I think the judge makes the ballot very slow. If you deal with that, I'll support that. But I do like the polling place to be the same place. One of the problems is now if it's a county election, it's in a county organized building. If it's a city election, it's a city building. It should be at the same recreation center, same firehouse, same place all the time. Make it easy for people to vote. On tourism, there's competition. I work with the West Hollywood Tourist Board. I know the people in Santa Monica. Yes, let's try to bring it together. But everybody wants to fight for it. But the big issue, and I look for Mr. Sadie and others, it's the triangle, the big triangle between Los Angeles, Arizona, San Francisco. People come here, they want to go to the Grand Canyon, they want to stop by Las Vegas, the Death Valley, Yosemite, down the coast. Work that triangle, we work the magic. That's what we should be embracing. And more 4-story hotels, not big high-rises, but where Best Westerns are, where families could afford to come of any make and model to come and enjoy our city. I think that's real important as we look at it. And consulting other things, I'm going to have a hearing, Mr. Buscaino and Mr. Bonin, all of us on the Trade and Commerce Committee, whether it makes sense to look at the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach. I think it would be a tough street fight between Los Angeles because the guys from San Pedro are pretty tough. But let's look at it. Let's see if it works. It's real important. I think you were outstanding to look at other ports on the West Coast, what goes on there. It's key. On the community planning process, that really has to be clear. What goes, protect the neighborhoods, and I'd say that because neighborhoods are real important. At the same time, find what could have jobs. The most important thing would be, Mr. Weezar, in my mind, if I was around, is help the USC County Medical Center transform into a greater place than it is. Because there's all those great hospitals in between county roads departments. We need a new juvenile hall there. Go up to Big County where some of the greatest doctors are and nurses. That needs to be enhanced and connected to Cal State LA. And also we talk about our universities. Just one more minute. Our universities is real important as we look to that. But also community colleges, which I know you had a piece in that. Very important. I pledge my support to look at these, and I thank you for all of this here. It's real important as we look at things and see what works. I even think sometimes this council should be a little bit bigger and be done regionally, as opposed to what I argued the other day about trash doesn't know no borders. Let's do things regionally as we try to be more effective. Anyway, thank you all, Mr. Cantor, Mr. Buhner, George, thank you, and also thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. If I might just add one word, Mr. President Wesson.
Go right ahead.
I failed to introduce David Fleming and George Plaw and Tyler Eisen, 3 great members of this commission and great members of our community. I apologize for that.
And tell Tyler I love him, but I'd like the police to work 4 10s instead of 3 12s.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that said, Mr. Joe Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership in convening this commission. We're always looking to find ways to make bold decisions, and this commission did just that. These are tough, bold recommendations to move the city forward and make it ultimately a better place to live, work, visit, raise a family. For me, the port is a huge issue. And I think that was one recommendation that has really brought forth the discussion since the report came out. And yes, the Port of Los Angeles is competing more with Long Beach than ever before. And it's important for us to find mutual benefits between both ports. And I'd like to hear more maybe from Mr. Buhner on finding ways to overcome the obstacles of merging both ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman Buscaino. We took a look at how...
Can you hold my time as well, please?
We took a look at how we're doing, and I think it's an important place to start. Okay, the status quo, we've lost 5 points of national market share in the combined LA area complex, whatever the name would be if you combine LA and Long Beach. 5 points of national market share. The loss alone of business is about 60,000 jobs and 100 million in tax revenue. So that's the place to start, which is to say, okay, how do we feel about the status quo? And it's clear we face challenges. It's clear the Panama Canal is being widened. New York and New Jersey collaborate. Charleston and South Carolina and Georgia collaborate. Seattle, Tacoma collaborate. What we've proposed is a true JPA, Joint Powers Authority, meaning 50-50. This would not be Los Angeles subsuming the Port of Long Beach. This would not be Long Beach subsuming the Port of Los Angeles. But combine the port commissions, if you will, so the leadership, the oversight, your participation happens pari passu with your colleagues from Long Beach. So the strategic decisions about how to compete, where to invest, where we can best use the scarce resources we have to grow the pie will happen. We don't win when Los Angeles steals a shipper from Long Beach and Long Beach steals a shipper from Los Angeles.
Right.
That race to the bottom isn't going to do it for us. So it's clear broader collaboration, as others are doing, is a path we should explore as partners. And I think one of the issues this chamber has to work to overcome, and your leadership can help, is to help the folks in Long Beach understand this would be a true 50-50 partnership.
Well, even more so with these shipping lines that are forming alliances to pull these resources together. This is definitely on our radar. We heard from our neighbors in Long Beach that Mayor Foster that he wasn't looped in the discussion. Can you explain why we didn't reach out to our neighbors in Long Beach?
Sure. Well, let me just put in some context. We have heard from the port people across the country. So we spoke to the folks in New York, New Jersey, and tried to understand where, if we think the LA-Long Beach rivalry is fierce, go to New York, New Jersey. They closed the bridge. You can't go back and forth. But we heard from both governors, we heard from their staffs how they see collaboration as the win. And one of the challenges we have in Los Angeles is to recognize knowledge and innovation doesn't always start here. So we look beyond LA and Long Beach to see where good looked like.
I do want to make a point, and this is something, I don't know if you spoke internally about both ports. Both ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles are already working collaboratively on the issues of the environment, of moving goods, of technology, of the environmental mitigation. Also note that we're advocating, both ports are advocating on the state and federal level. So do just note that I know Mr. LaBonge, chairing TCT, wants to hold a committee meeting at the harbor to further discuss this recommendation, and I'm open to that. And lastly, I want to point out, and I applaud your efforts on the recommendation of creating a regional tourism authority. Oftentimes we feel down at the harbor that we're being ignored. We have cruise ships coming into our port. And we also, what we find and what we're continuing to find are these buses that are waiting for passengers to disembark the cruise ship and leaving the St. Peter, Wilmington area. And that's something that we need to work on, which we already are on waterfront redevelopment, which I know we have an item before us coming up. And knowing that the city of Los Angeles, the city of LA focus, what we're looking at on the tourism dollars, we run our general fund dollars based on tourism dollars, which I applaud your efforts in identifying the need for creating a regional tourism authority. So with that, thank you for your service, and look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Cantor, Mr. Buettner, the rest of your panel. Genuinely thank you for your service and your hard work. This stuff ain't easy, as you saw, and you guys didn't have to do it with the requirements of the Brown Act or people in costume yelling at you or while trying to pave streets and fill potholes at the same time. So now you know what it's like. There's some of what you presented that I really agreed with. There's some that I sort of agreed with, and there's some I'm just not quite there yet. What I really agreed with, I love your call for doing community plans. I loved your recommendations on economic development, and I totally agree with the call for regional tourism authority. I would like you, going forward, to help us figure out how to do that, because, frankly, I think Santa Monica is marketed much better than Venice. So I have all the incentive in the world to want to make a regional tourism authority a reality. I ain't sure that Santa Monica has the same incentive. So how do we get Santa Monica to join with us, Long Beach to join with us, something to engage on as we go forward? An issue where I'm half with you, which is moving the elections to the fall. I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense to move them to a time of the year that voters are accustomed to voting in. Certainly November, maybe September primary, November runoff. I don't think it makes any sense to move them to even-numbered years on the same ballot as a presidential election. If we had done that in 2008, the office of mayor would have been the 25th or the 26th thing on the ballot. After you do the city races, after you do city propositions, school board races would have been in the 30s. And I don't think that enhances civic engagement or enhances participation. I actually don't think that it minimizes special interests. I think it maximizes them. I think elections then become slates. I think it enhances parties. I think it enhances wealthy folks who can buy a slate like school board races are now, which school board candidates don't even run their own campaigns. They're proxy campaigns for teachers' unions and charter movement. An area where I'm not quite there with you is the Office of Accountability and Transparency. I kind of think Mickey challenged us to come up with better ideas, and I think here is an area where there's a better idea kind of in play already. The idea of having information accessible, I think, our mayor is now starting to do that with budget. I think our controller is now doing that. I think Mr. Blumenfield is pushing to do that in all sorts of ways. I think often there's and I think that's done without bureaucracy and without funding, and is much more participatory and is much more accessible. I think that when it comes to the idea of accountability, the idea that the CLA or the CAO may not be truly accountable or independent, I actually challenge that. I really do, and I'd ask for some specifics on where you think that doesn't happen. I think there's a zeitgeist perception that these are sort of political pawns who do what we're told, but I was a big advocate for a waste franchise system, and so were a lot of members of the last council. And Mr. Santana had no reservations whatsoever about coming out with a policy paper that opposed that, despite I think he knew that's where most of the policymakers wanted to go. So, maybe rather than a new Office of Accountability and Transparency, maybe it's the emerging technological transparency that's happening, and maybe it's a charter amendment that gives some more authority or responsibility to the city controller. So those are just some of my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonham. It's a good argument. First, let me take the election to ballot. I've only chaired or run 17 campaigns in my not-so-vaunted career here. Voters are very smart. They know how to go down ballot. They go down ballot very easily. Yes, there is some drop-off. Yes, sir. But even if there is, it'd still be twice as many voters, much more diverse, much less subject to special interest. Right now, we know how elections are run in a very low turnout with the slate cards and phone calls and mail. We understand that. That doesn't mean good candidates win. They're around the horseshoe here. Good candidates win. But you still need to do those things and identify your voters. You and I can go through every precinct in LA and without a doubt, in an off-year election, say exactly what the turnout's going to be. We know that. The only question is, do you have the money to get to them? In a general election, you can't do that as easily. And let me tell you, we can argue about the diversity of the voters in the general election, just much more diverse. But I understand your arguments. On transparency and accountability, it's uncomfortable. I understand that. New York has exactly the same setup we do. A controller, a city attorney. They had a mayor who's pretty, and Michael Blumenfield, pretty transparent. Had run a good. But he believed it made sense, and they did it, and it's worked. Chicago's done the same thing under my friend Rahm Emanuel, and so this is not like this is not happening. They have the same setups, the same offices, good people in them, just like here. We're not criticizing. Certainly not Miguel Santana, Michael Fuhr, anybody else, or certainly this council. You hold people accountable. But this independent office would make a difference. We're convinced of it. Now, we can have the argument, but let's move forward on the argument. I agree with you. Let's discuss it. You've made some good points. It's time for us to make some change. Even if we say, as you might have suggested, more power to the city attorney, a different kind of setup in terms of how we do accountability and transparency.
Okay. Before I call the next speaker, Mr. Bonin, you do know we have a election reform commission that is currently meeting, discussing all of these things. They will, at the appropriate time, make a report to the council, and they'll have exact percentages and details and what happens if you. So there are a lot of concerns, but it is, I think, our responsibility to seriously look at it. So the Reform Commission will come before this body and give their pitch, whatever it is, when they decide it. It's being led by Fernando Guerra. Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you. and thank you all very much for the efforts, for putting it forward. You are all respected leaders in your fields, and it is greatly appreciated that you've taken the time and energy to come up with these ideas. I want to echo what a lot of my colleagues said. I think that there are things to agree with, certainly things that I agree with, things that I don't agree with, but what's great is that you're moving the conversation forward. Thought I would mention a couple of in particular. The election issue Mr. Bonham was talking about. I do have concerns about that as well. I'm very open to the idea of it, but I've also heard about the drop-off rate actually being quite severe, and that it's not just, and I think the Commission is looking into that, as you talked about. I've talked to some of the members of the Commission who said that in some cases they actually find out there's less turnout, which is counterintuitive. I don't know if you did that, the kind of research, but we'll see what happens there. And then the special interest part of it. An election when you're down ballot like that, and you have to have a much bigger electorate to campaign to, is going to cost a heck of a lot more for each campaign, and that's going to increase the influence of special interest, or could increase the influence of special interest. It's something that we need to be very measured and concerned about. So it may be a great idea. I'm not close to that idea personally, because I like the idea of aligning the elections, but I think it's not a simple issue by any means. And you've mentioned a few of the items in here, but we'll have a much greater discussion when the Commission comes out on it. In terms of the Accountability Office, I love the idea of more accountability. You compared it to the CBO and the LAO organizations I'm very familiar with, having worked in Congress as a staffer, and Mickey and I, we talked about CBO a little bit, and LAO. They're a little different than what's being proposed here, in that both of those were designed to be objective, but they're objective of partisan politics, and they're really designed to be a counterweight for the legislative branch vis-a-vis the executive branch, in terms of the way CBO was set up in 1974 and the way the LAO was set up, and the way that we use them. Now they're independent of, like the LAO, as former budget chair, worked very closely with them. They wouldn't do what I asked them to do, but they weren't. Their mission was very different than the way you described the mission here, in terms of a tool for the electorate to manage the relationship between the electorate and the elected officials. And I don't know that that's where the problem is. I think the issue is not about managing. We have a lot of counterweights there. It's about enhancing the information that the elected officials have and the public has to create better decisions. So a good idea. I'd like to see it fleshed out more and work with that idea more. Updating the community plans, great idea. I just spent, in my area, Warner Center, we had 8 years worth of work to get the Warner Center plan, and we're already seeing tremendous investment in that, and I got to take that over the finish line. It took 8 years, not because of the bureaucracy that was standing in the way, but even in that community, which was, I think, much more aligned than a lot of others in terms of the goals, but because of the difference of opinions in communities. So we need to figure out how to make that process easier for communities. And again, that process is not lacking because of the bureaucry.
Watch your time.
Okay, I'm over my time. I have a lot more things to go after, so I won't go after the last point, the 7.75% on the pension issue. I get that we need to be conservative. I'm all for being conservative, but I also think we need to look at the last 100 years of returns of when municipalities have come into place and been able to meet that, and we need to be very cautious as we lower that, the impact that has on all of city services. It's a complex question. It's not as, if we were to just drop the floor on that, it would be devastating to the city.
Just to comment quickly, Mr. Councilman, those 3 points. In terms of the voter issue, we look very carefully at it and recognize 23% is a pretty low bar to clear. San Diego had 75% vote for president, 69% voted for mayor. They had a 5-point drop-off. If we had more than 50% voting in our last presidential election in Los Angeles, which we did, you'd have to have half those voters choose not to participate and elect for mayor. I don't think that's a risk or an issue. I grew up under the notion in our democracy, any vote is a good one. I think we've left behind a long time ago efforts to suppress a diverse and broader population from voting. And I challenge the notion or the path one might go on to say, well, is that marginal voter as informed as the current voters? I don't think that's the way our democracy is set up. I think each and every voter is a voter that we should appreciate, recognize, and value, and we should be seeking to increase the diversity of our voter pool as aggressively as we can. On the Office of Transparency and Accountability, kind of simple question to ask. This council deliberated whether one was needed for DWP. As Councilman LaBonge is fond of saying, it's an important part of the city, but it's not all the city does. So the question is kind of an obvious one, which is why wouldn't this council take that next step and say, you know what, everything we do should be looked at, should be reviewed. Keeping the electorate informed is a fundamental responsibility of this body, and I'll take you back to those questions I asked. Put yourself in the position of an ordinary voter and try to answer those questions I asked. I think you won't be able to. It draws out very clearly why an Office of Transparency would help. On the pension calculation, let's be sure to separate discount rates from earnings returns. But I'll challenge the point you made about be careful of lowering it because it will cost. All we're doing in the current situation is deferring that cost to a later date where it'll cost even more. At 7.75%, it more than doubles in 9 years. So defer $10 million, it's a $20 million problem that we're passing on to our kids and grandkids. So it does not increase costs. We're talking about where that time burden for today's services belong, and our view would be they belong today. The taxpayers today have to pay for what's being provided today. We shouldn't defer the costs and burden future generations. Thank you.
Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, want to just thank the committee for its work in this effort and your commitment, as you've demonstrated over the years, to our community in so many ways. I thought all the recommendations certainly deserve the kind of full examination that our President's going to make sure that they receive. Issues around improving the number of voters, I think, is always worthy and always timely for discussion. This idea of realigning or aligning the votes with the federal cycle, I think, makes a lot of sense. Anything to improve the poor quality of turnout that we have now, I think we should be looking at, and that includes same-day registration and a bunch of other strategies that have been recognized. Certainly, the notion of better collaboration in tourism, important component for economic development across many ranges. It is a contentious issue. How do we, get the selfishness out and encourage the kind of collaboration that's going to be so important? Look forward to that discussion. Also, this whole idea of more transparency, I think, is always timely. And whether or not we adopt these recommendations or proposals, certainly the idea of providing a better framework for discussing issues, getting facts for the public and as policymakers, I think, is really critical. But I wanted to focus a little bit on this whole idea of economic development, community economic development. In the first report, there were some references to income disparities and the need to kind of raise all the boats. I'd like for you to kind of elaborate on that again in the sense of you think the city's responsibility in taking some leadership in making that happen. And then secondly, this whole idea of public-private partnerships. All of you have had some significant experiences in the private sector. How can we align city resources with the private sector in a way to move economic development forward, especially in underserved communities? Now that we don't have redevelopment, we're going to have to come up with a new strategy to allocate resources and help to incent the kind of cooperative collaboration that the private sector can do so well. So thoughts on that, income disparities and collaborating for more private-public partnerships.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Appreciate your comments. First of all, on income disparities, we call for a minimum wage hike, $11. $11 is only, at $10, you don't even get out of poverty, working full-time, 40-hour weeks. It has to go up to $11 to make it, and we would like to see that happen. I know that this is something going on at the state of California and nationally. We ought to. I hope you would support it, but I hope we could have our own drive towards that. Accelerating infrastructure projects. George Ply has been a big advocate of that. We have billions of dollars, billions, on the books, ready to go. If we just push it and push it fast, that's jobs, thousands of jobs we're talking about, and we could move that if we could move faster. The port of L.A. Down at the Southern California International Gateway, Mr. Buscano knows that. We were talking about 3,000 construction jobs if we just get that going. If we could also redo the UP facility down there, make it environmentally more sensitive, that's thousands of more jobs. You're right. You're absolutely correct. These are the ways, some of the ways, clusters, public-private partnership, developing areas, as New York has done, where biotech and high technology and environmental organizations who are doing environmental work can come together, create employment around them. For instance, the Air Resources Board, Mr. President, wants to move. We should have them move to Los Angeles. That's 400 employees right there, and they have a lot of consultants around them that have their offices in those areas. We should be going to the state of California, to the governor, to Mary Nichols, our friend Mary Nichols, and saying, bring it to Los Angeles. That's what we're talking about, Mr. Price. Those are some ideas that we could jump on right now.
I appreciate that. Any thoughts, though, about an entity, a separate entity, perhaps?
Watch your time.
Public-private entity that could further advance economic development, further champion economic development, as has been done in many other communities, mostly on the East Coast. But what models can we adopt to, again, create a structure that will help leverage limited resources in ways that we haven't, especially in underserved communities?
Go ahead.
Mr. Councilman, I think you're on to a right approach. I know this body has been deliberating on how to look at the next generation of economic development, the loss of the CRA and some of the other tools cities in California have historically had. The challenge, as most of the other public-private partnerships or other major cities have, is they have both an authority, which has a certain set of jurisdictional powers, but they also have a dowry. And unless you address both of those issues, you either create yet another bureaucracy to talk, which is nice, but not necessarily empowered to act or with a wallet to do so. So as this body continues to deliberate structures, I encourage you to think about both of those. Can they actually act on behalf of this body in a uniform fashion, in a time-effective manner? And do they have resources to try and address the needs of particular employers and hopefully create a setting where they might employ people? You need to do both.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like everybody else, I commend you for your good work, and obviously it's amazing that we were able to put together such a respected group of people doing this, which I think for the most part is a positive. On tourism especially, and on regional cooperation, I'm very much in agreement with you. I think the city probably has never done enough to market itself and to seek tourism. I was involved in this with the city of West Hollywood. I helped create their marketing corporation when they first became a city, and I think it's partly responsible for their significant economic success and the fact that they have a 100% reserve in their budget and everything is going well economically. And I think the whole region should be doing that, and if we don't do regionally, we need to do more as a city, because we have so many attributes that we don't market to ourselves. Things like the zoo. I mean, we have an amazing zoo. People go to San Diego to see theirs from Los Angeles instead of going to ours. We have a lot of missed marketing opportunities, so I think that's a good thing to have focused on and something we should really push. And certainly in agreement with as far as the ports as well, not an issue that I usually deal with, but there's no question the cooperation and seeking business as a region, I think, is real positive. I also think the voters' suggestion is interesting. Mickey and I might compete for how many campaigns we've worked in. I probably haven't run as many, but I've worked on at least 150, and I have to say it's frustrating to watch 20-25% turnout in Los Angeles, just as it was in West Hollywood and other places. And there are a lot of negative elements to it, but I think by and large getting a 65 or 70% turnout, I think trumps them all. So I think this is something we should look at very seriously. The one thing, there are other things I could talk about too, but the one thing I disagree with, and so vehemently, And I actually think this is the one place where this effort may have caused us harm, because unfortunately, as a group, you're so well respected. I think you may be influential in something that I think is a disastrous thing for us to look at, and which is the change in the assumption for pensions. Comparing it to Warren Buffett, I think it's apples and oranges, because I don't believe that 6% assumption is there because his company can't meet a higher number. I think it's an indication of generosity towards their employees, frankly, to make sure that much money goes to the pension system. But it's not like they have trouble funding it. I think the assumptions aren't truly necessary for the city. I think historically, if you look on any marker, we haven't had a bad time matching the assumptions. And I think the fact is, if we really cut our assumptions, we are cutting money that harms the very people that we're trying to protect. And I think it would be fair to look at if we were like Chicago and had a 40% or so funded pension system. This pension system is reasonably well funded. We've enacted a number of reforms that are going to save us billions of dollars. But the fact is, partly on the strength of this, I'm pretty sure our pension systems are going to cut 0.25%. And that means money that we could have used to reduce our business license tax. That's money we could have used to put off deferred maintenance, to address our deferred maintenance problems and our drastically now cut back services. And so I would argue as strongly as possible for us not to change those assumptions by even the tiniest bit, and I think we will be paying heavily for our pension systems, even considering that, to be honest.
Thank you. Mr. Englander.
Excuse me, Council President, may I comment on that last?
Go right ahead.
Thank you for your kind words, and sorry we've raised a difficult issue. Retirement costs have grown from less than 3% of the budget to more than 20%, or almost 20%. That's an issue. That means we have, or this body has, an unfortunate choice to consider paying the earned retirement of a city employee or paying a current employee. That's a terrible choice. It's a terrible position to be in. We recognize the tough choices you have to make. But it's all about burden shifting. So if we don't look candidly at what our assumptions are for future costs today, we're shifting that liability somewhere else. It doesn't go away. As we've looked at discount rates and how people value things, we have to be honest and recognize we've come off an unprecedented period in our history where interest rates have gone from an historic high to an historic low. That's the last 3 decades. Ask anyone in the investment world, when you go from high interest rates to low interest rates, financial assets do very well. When you go from low interest rates to low interest rates, or low interest rates to higher interest rates, those same financial assets do not so well. So I encourage you, as you have deliberation about what discount rate to use, to expand the universe of potential expert witnesses. Bill Gross, just down in Newport Beach, manages $1 trillion, one of the most highly regarded investors in the country, has commented on this subject. I'm sure he'd take the ride up and talk with you. Obviously, Mr. Buffett's partner lives in this town. He might come and talk with you. But as opposed to challenging what we do today, we're asking you to broaden the spectrum of experts you look at, because we have to be honest with ourselves what today's span of government costs. And we have to acknowledge that an ever-increasing share to retirement costs is not a sustainable proposition. It brings tough choices back to this chamber, but we think that's better than deferring the reckoning and winding up in a situation where we have insufficient resource to cover what the city has to do. Thank you.
Mr. Englander.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you all very much as well. This isn't easy to take a very complicated city and process and dissect it in a very short amount of time and come up with various recommendations. And it's easy to critique the past and come up with recommendations that are incredibly complicated to implement, but some very good ideas as well. One of the things that from in reading through all the various recommendations that I sort of dawned on me, and I think the name of the report is fitting, that it's a 2020 report, looking back and looking ahead, which is critically important for all of us to do constantly. One of the things that I will say it didn't take into account is what's occurring today, which is okay, because the mission of it was what's happened and where are we going. And some of the things that are occurring today is there is a new mayor, there's a new city attorney, there's a new controller. Nearly every member of the body is virtually new as well. And there's a new approach. And some of the things that are happening, I think, would be helpful to get some input on and how those progress. And with that comes, in some of the categories, transparency and accountability. One of the things the city's taken on is a whole new process is performance-based management, looking at a metric. It's something that the Budget and Finance Committee has never discussed. We've never had in the budgets. We've just gone through and are going through right now the budget process, and each department is coming up with a metric that's transparent and how we start measuring service delivery models. How are we going to improve on those? How are we going to make those more transparent? We've got a city controller who's now putting all that data and all the financial information online. To what depth, and how do we get all of that it used to be, quite frankly, we just heard from him recently, he went back and found boxes of antiquated systems and paperwork literally stacked in storage that hadn't been reviewed in years. All of that has now been digitized, and it's all online, so you can sift through it and figure out and from a transparency perspective where things are at and the enabling ordinances that need to be updated so those monies can be spent on local service delivery. So some of those things, how do we emerge and move that even to the next level, and developing some of the metrics and key measurement issues. In terms of our infrastructure, there's been a lot of new integrated ways to look at how we deal with updating infrastructure. And in fact, just speaking with Felipe Fuentes this morning about SOSLA and fixing streets and wanting to make sure that we have complete streets and green streets and we can meet our TMDL standards and water capture and all those things to re-engineer and think differently, not just fixing our infrastructure the same old way, but getting all the different city departments and city families and stakeholders to talk about that as a complete system is critically important. The fire department, one of the things that were mentioned, that response times were dramatically increased. They weren't dramatically increased, but it has been decimated. One of the new things that has just occurred, we had our first meeting 2 weeks ago, was FireStat LA. It's never been done. That we will be, in fact, the first department in the country to have such a system modeled after CompStat. Getting some input on from you guys on what we should do moving forward on that would be incredibly helpful. But that's very exciting, and the first time that's happened. It's taken 2 years to get that model off the ground. And with that, and the report mentioned a lost fire truck. I wanted to ask about that in $1 million lawsuit, and I couldn't find anything in my research on that particular matter, but it highlighted that. Some of the things in jobs and cutting the bureaucracy.
Watch your time.
I'll watch it. Has been recently done. As we well know, 12 to 1 or 22 to 1 never really got off the ground, again, because it's so complicated. But moving forward with streamlining some of those functional transfers that was just done in this year's budget by the mayor, and moving some of the departments that make sense to co-locate them and collaborate. Those initiatives are now finally getting off the ground. The Election Reform Commission, as you mentioned, I spoke to them this morning, and they're asking for more time. They want another 3 weeks and saying that may not be enough, but it is incredibly complicated. It's not just moving a date. It's moving systems. It's moving people. It's moving processes and moving money and trying to figure that out. So I think we're all behind some reform efforts there. And the LAPD Overtime Bank, we had a detailed discussion on that the other day in budget and talking about restructuring, refinancing, renegotiating that bank, which is something we need some new eyes on as well. We've got to figure out that $100 million that grows exponentially in time and how we're going to deal with that issues and losing officers in the field because of that. That's holding that up as an example we're well aware of. Working towards a solution is something that we can use some input on as well, and we're working towards that as well. Anyway, really, though, wanted to thank you because it's a look back, it's a look forward, dealing with the things now, and getting some input on how those new functions and mechanisms and transparency and performance-based initiatives are working and how we can move those forward, I think are critically important as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
If I might, just one brief comment.
Go right ahead.
President Wesson, Councilmember Englander, you weren't, I'm sure you were busy, you weren't here when I first, I praised the council, the mayor, the controller, the city attorney, for what has been done and where are you going on pensions, on health care, on holding employment down, on trying to deal with fiscal discipline. You've done a terrific job. No one is arguing you haven't. If there's an argument here, it is let's look at the future and let's grab it and make the change we need. Now, we can argue how to do that. That's fine. But we're not arguing about or even criticizing. We're doing I'll start out by saying you've done a terrific job led by President Wesson. And I'd say nothing but good things about it. The question for us is how do we deal with these problems we have in the future?
And if I could,
Mr. Englander?
just to not counter that, but to answer that, I wasn't looking to suggest anything but that. What I'm asking, actually, and it's more of an ask, is that you look at also maybe a next step of some of the things we're doing. Give us the input on that directly. How can we improve some of these metrics? How can we look at CompStatting, if you will, all of the different services we're doing in a more transparent manner, not just creating another office of, whether it's an office of transparency, but getting into some of those details. I mean, you all bring such a great level of expertise and experience to the table. That look and that in-depth knowledge on an ongoing basis, not just filing a report on a shelf, but actually working with us on a regular basis now would be welcomed.
Thank you. So now let me move to Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. I want to also thank you for the effort you put in on this report and the time, because it's obvious that you've put forth a great deal of effort. I just want to kind of quickly go through the main recommendations, and just a couple of ideas that I had is that when we talk about the merging of the two ports, it appeared that immediately got a pushback from Long Beach. What I was wondering whether we'd be in better shape of wording it that we're looking for a regional port authority in which each port can somewhat independently work as they do, but have an authority looking at a regional approach for bringing in dealing with the larger issues, whether that would be an approach as opposed to saying let's merge them because you're going to get into the issues, the dynamics of cost and expenditures and things like that. The other issue I think is one of the most important things, these 35 community plans, they've been being worked on for the 10 years I've been here, and they may still be worked on when I leave. And so it's something that in my district, some of our plans are 40 years old. They've been rubber stamped, and when people drive through the community and wonder why we have so much construction or building and types of businesses that don't match each other, is because by right people can do what they want. They can convert buildings into other businesses. And so I think the plans will give developers somewhat of a guideline of what's to look forward to. On dealing with the minimum wage, I would recommend that we look at minimum wage on a statewide basis as opposed to picking one county over another or a city over another city, which then creates the dynamics of people looking for a better deal. When you have it on a statewide, all cities and jurisdictions are being dealt with, are viewed similarly. And as it relates to water and power, I don't quite understand that one yet in the sense of and how it might conflict with the ratepayer advocate. From what I've seen of water and power, I would hate to invest any more money in it until we found exactly what they do with the money they have. And so I think that's particularly when we deal with the issues of pension, medical costs that seem to be significantly higher than any other part of the city, and also the 100+ positions that they pay 40%, 20 to 40% more than any other part of the city. Those things seem to be in need of correction before we can add another structure on top. The Office of Transparency, I would just say that there is a need, and I would think number one priority is not only tracking finances, but actually tracking what are the budgeted positions supposed to do. I think that's been a shortfall of this city since I've been a member of it. We go through a lot of energy improving budgets. People get their annual budget, but no one ever quite goes to find out, did they accomplish what the intended budget strategy was? And I think that's absolutely essential in looking at that transparency. The issue of elections, I've looked at this 100 different ways, and since the Supreme Court has validated the issue of independent campaigns and PACs, I don't know if you'll have a solution for elections because they pretty much are out of the hands of the candidates, and you're basically addressing issues that by the Supreme Court says you have no ability to stop people's freedom of speech, yet we're setting rules on top of rules for candidates to run for office when PACs and independent campaigns can do much of what they want. The regional tourism, I think, is absolutely on point. I would just like to say I appreciate your effort on the pension. Being that I get one, I understand what you're talking about, and that the issue when you get pensions jumping from 5 to 20%, the last thing a person on a pension wants to hear, as they heard in Detroit recently, your pension has been cut, even though you've served the time. For those who believe that the percentages and the sense of the liability isn't significant, there's only 3 ways you get money in the pension system. It's the contribution of the employee, the return on investment, and it's the donation of the city. Any one of those first two that do not work out, the city contributes more. But if you take the tack that let's not fulfill our obligation to the pension so that we can fix a sidewalk or cut a tree, you're really hurting those who have already invested their 30-plus years in the city, and you're basically telling them, I'm going to bet on the come that you can die before the pension runs out. And I don't think that's something that people who work here believe that should be done. I'll push my button and come back.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Cedillo.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for the breadth and depth of your presentation. You've pushed us to think differently. You've pushed us to think differently. I want to ask that you continue to have some relationship with us. I'm interested in some other questions. I think the first most fundamental question for us to ask is, what is our job? Right? What is the job of the council? What is the job of the city? And I think for us, or at least for me, it's a question of service. We are public servants. The city has its mission to provide certain services. And what I want to learn from you is how we change the culture of work, how we infuse a spirit of entrepreneurship into the city, into those who perform our basic services, how we get more public focused and business focused, and how we do that with the current workforce, because that's the reality that we have to deal with. For me, my top concern as it relates to tourism is public space. What do people see when they come to the city? What do our parks look like? Are our trees trimmed? Are our streets paved? Very basic fundamentals. How do we promote tourism? Is that the job of the city? Or is that a job of a separate entity? Right? With more, we're the city of Hollywood. And so we ought to take advantage of that creativity and that innovation that exists there. And perhaps maybe that's where a partnership lies in terms of who promotes the city. It is a shame that the zoo's not promoted in Los Angeles as it is in San Diego. We have one of the greatest cities in terms of tourist attractions. Think of today. The Kings are winning, moving towards the Stanley Cup. The Clippers are moving towards the NBA championship. The weather is incomparable. How does anybody compete with us? We go 300 days, 300 plus days of 72 degrees. No one can compete with that. New York, you're freezing. Or it's so hot you can't step outside. Who wants to go to a Broadway show when you're it's sweltering or freezing? These are real aspects of how we make decisions about how we live. And so those are the questions I would like to continue this dialogue. I really appreciate your commitment to the city. As private citizens, it's the best of citizenship. There's other questions about working with our economy, the need for housing. We have a housing crisis, not just a low income, not a veteran, not housing for the poor, but we have a general housing crisis. And I want to have that discussion with you, how we create more stock, right, for the new teachers, for the city workers, for the people working in downtown, and how do we create that housing closer to the jobs. Because one of my concerns is as we see a boom and a renaissance taking place in Los Angeles, that it should be, I'm pro Los Angeles. And I want those jobs to be local.
Watch your time.
I don't want people driving in necessarily from the OC or Lancaster or the IE, coming in, working, and then leaving and taking those tax dollars out of the city. I'd like to see them staying. So those are questions I'd like to hope, Mr. President, that we can have this ongoing and continued relationship with this incredible commission, because you have inspired us to think beyond the box. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. And this is the beginning, not the end. Conversations are going to take place, and we made a lot of friends with the commission members, and I'm sure they will be available to answer questions or give input if we need so. So, with that said, Mr. Parks.
I was in mid-sentence. Let me go back. One thing again on the pensions. I think it's so important to continue to emphasize that. In fact, if we keep spending the money that was supposedly put aside to secure pensions and spend it on other things, I think there used to be a word in police work called kiting, and they used to arrest people for floating a check and then trying to catch up it. Now with the new automated system in the banking, you go use your card and it's on your card before you leave the store. But people used to actually write a check and hope they didn't catch up to Tuesday or Wednesday, and then they'd spend that money a second or third time. That's what happens when you take the pension money and spend it on other things and allow the percentages to drop down below what is reasonable. And I think the other issue that zeroes in on some of this stuff is because of the city's, in my judgment, addiction to hiring people, it continues to drive the infrastructure or the deficits, the structural deficits. We cannot continue to afford pensions, workers' comp, and also medical costs at the rate it's going and still hire more and more people. Those are 30-year decisions that down the road we will still be paying. And so the more of a balance that we can create in having city employees versus farming work out in that balance, the better off we're going to be, that we don't have to absorb that overhead. The other issue is, let's see, I think that pretty well covers. I was going to ask Mr. Wesson a couple of things. I would hope, as you said earlier, that you form this out to individual committees. I would hope that you consider joint committees, because in my time here, nothing ever seems to work if you send it out to 5 committees and expect them to do a piece of the action. Joint committees seem to hold the project into a form that produces a report and recommendations for the whole body of work. So I would hope that you'd consider that. I'd also hope that we'd have some way of an annual review, either from this group or another, and somewhere down the line, a new commission to come back and say, what are all the things that we left on the table that we can bring forward? And then my final comment is, I would really like to see, and one of the things that the community that I represent have commented, many of the things they read about are really 40,000 feet and above as far as they're concerned. They would have liked to have seen more of the mechanical type of things that they can get their arms around to say, okay, this is where this is going. I would hope that there are some things that would have allowed us to understand how do you implement these things that would have been able to be shared. And if some of those things that fell to the cutting room floor might be very helpful in the discussion of how do you implement these things, what are the steps, what are the things that didn't make the cut but are things the city should be looking at, and share those so that they're not lost with all of this discussion. So thank you.
If I might say, Mr. Parks, very quick comment.
Go right ahead.
President Wesson, I'm sorry. I agree with you. We had 40 recommendations we went over. We knew if we went with 40, no one would look at any one, so we tried to cut it down. But you're absolutely correct. In fact, you have been very articulate and put on paper a number of recommendations, any number that should warrant some review by this council. We were very impressed by what you had said, and we used your list, by the way, in compiling our list.
Those are the ones I really like.
Okay, thank you. Again, I want to thank Mickey and the entire commission for your hard work. I think today, no applause, I think today we had a very interesting conversation, and be assured that we will begin serious conversations where it relates to the recommendations that we have received. So again, thank you all so very much. Madam Clerk, I'd like to now move to item 27. Item 27. We do have one card on this item. Juana Kala, item 27.
And a substitute motion has been circulated for this item.
Wow, that was a lot of talking.
Stay on this issue.
Yeah, that's the issue. You want people to vote. You bore them to death.
No, Mr.
Okay.
Kala, item
Consideration
27.
of the resolution, Englander Wizard, relative to establishing a position in the city, 2013-2014 state legislative program to support AB 1510, which would be does that have anything to do with housing?
No, you're off the item.
Oh, I must be in a different dimension because all I heard was a lot of noise and no action.
Okay, Mr. Englander.
Much. What this bill is, colleagues, is the city's collectively working to develop a plan to mitigate earthquake risks for buildings. In fact, the mayor established an unprecedented partnership, as we all know, with Dr. Lucy Jones from the U.S. Geological Survey to help the city prepare for the next impending earthquake. Dr. Jones is tasked with determining what policies and strategies the city needs to adopt to ensure LA is safe and earthquake resilient. That includes earthquake mitigation plans, enhancing recovery partnerships, and developing a strategy to ensure buildings throughout LA are safe and earthquake resilient. I've partnered with Assemblyman Adrin Nazarian to develop a proactive financial mechanism to assist building owners potentially tasked with the burden of taking on tens of thousands of dollars in financial obligations to retrofit the building. This has been one of the biggest political issues, quite frankly, in getting this done, is whether it's developing an inventory or mandating that the retrofits be done, is the tremendous cost. And the cost either as a pass-through to the renters or the owners or deferred maintenance that is done either way. And so this bill, while it remains fluid and there will be some changes as this goes on, it's being heard in committee, and so we'd ask for your aye vote. The credit amount shall be claimed by the qualified taxpayer at the rate of only 1/5 the credit amount for the taxable year, in which the credit is allocated 1/5 the credit amount for each year subsequent to that for 4 years, essentially giving them an incentive to get the work done. They have to obtain a certification from the local authority, which would be us, to show that the actual work was done and it's no longer an at-risk property. This is just yet another step to help make sure that we protect our valuable and vulnerable infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
City staff to come. I just had a couple of quick questions. We've gotten a lot of interest in this, particularly from apartment owners, and if you can clarify so we're able to explain it better. One of the things I found in looking at the CLA report, it seems like we intermix the word homes and qualified buildings as one of the same. And I'm just wondering, is qualified buildings a broader definition? And also, do homes include condos, apartments, mixed-use residential with commercial, so that people will clearly understand what is the category of residents that we're looking at?
Gabriel Salazar with the CLA office. The answer to both of your questions is yes. In terms of regarding mixed use, the bill doesn't elaborate on that, but does residential does cover lofts, condominiums, multi-story building structures, residential structures.
Okay, the other thing is that does this work simultaneously with the current motions about concrete buildings, or is this separate and apart?
Those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but that will have to be explored a bit further to realize, to see if there's an impact to existing motions that are in place.
Because can we go, I mean, in talking to the public, advise them that buildings that were converted from commercial buildings into residential that are concrete, that this is something that they should have an interest in?
It seems that this does focus on older buildings, so it may be an issue. So I mean, it should be probably studied further.
You said maybe an issue that they're not or they are?
It focuses on like pre-1980 concrete residential buildings, so it may be those that are converted from concrete to residential. So it kind of encourages the retrofitting of those types of building structures as well.
So those would be encouraged to be a part of the program.
So yes, it seems that it would be complementary to existing motions.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Labange?
Just extra clarification, this is not an ABCD rating of the buildings.
No, sir.
And it's not in the bill at all.
No.
This is related to funding sources.
Got it. Also, members, just to let you know, I was in Building and Safety this morning and met with our fine new General Manager, Ray Chan, and today he's giving a very extensive update on this, so I'm sure this would probably go along with that as we proceed with that. But also, you should check with Ray Chan from Building and Safety, the General Manager, who's putting together the needed information we have on our own challenges. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Thank you very much. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
Go ahead. And that vote, Mr. President, was for whether or not to substitute. Now council should vote on the actual substitute motion.
Okay, so now we'll actually vote on the motion. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, that's moved forward. Mr. Englander. Mr. Buscaino, you had forthwith on item 27 per Mr. Englander. Mr. Buscaino, you wanted me to...
Item number 5, please. If we can reconsider, it's going to be a note and file.
Okay, so we're going to vote on reconsideration, item 5. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, now...
We need to reconsider for purposes of note and file. We'll note and file it now. Thank you.
Okay.
Just note and file.
So without objection, that'll be the order.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You want to coming back to you, Mr. Buscaino? Would you like to deal with item 6?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues.
Item 6, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, a few weeks ago we held this item down at the harbor. I want to thank Mr. Labange, Chair of TCT, for bringing the committee to the harbor to talk about items affecting the San Pedro Wilmington community, specifically on waterfront redevelopment. And this item we spoke about this item, and we brought the port and community-based organizations that were in support of continuing the progress of waterfront redevelopment. Colleagues, we are the last standing major port that's not a tourist attraction. And we heard from the 2020 report that we need to work on collaborating our tourism efforts regionally. And oftentimes we feel the harbor area is ignored when it comes to tourism dollars. And what better way to put the harbor area, San Pedro and Wilmington, on the map than to redevelop our waterfront. We have the commitment from Mayor Garcetti, the Port Commission, in ensuring that the LA waterfront is an attraction, is a destination. We owe it to the residents, we owe it to the state, we owe it to this country, ensuring that people visit us so that when these passengers from the cruise ships come, they want to, our great hope is that they disembark and spend their dollars in San Pedro and Wilmington. So with that, just thanks, and just to remind my colleagues the importance of the priority that this project is to me and the Port of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so let's prepare to vote on. Thank you again, Mr. Buscaino. Let us prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, now we're going to move to item 23, called special by Mr. Akala. Item 23, please come forward.
What is this notice of no food in the chambers? What is this? Correct? Is eating like
let's
a pig?
Let's stay on the item.
Okay.
The item 23.
See, it doesn't apply to the people, I guess. Motion Parks of Herald relative to an offer of the a reward for information leading to the identification, apprehension, and conviction of the person or persons responsible for the death of Herman Johnson on October 6, 2013. If the rewards do any good, implement them, but according to Mr. Welch, they don't really do anything. So hold my time. I'm in at 6.
Thank you. Okay, let's prepare. Oh, no, Mr. Parks.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Parks.
I'd ask that we have a unanimous vote on this reward motion. On Sunday, October the 6th, 2013, at approximately 0620 hours, Southwest Patrol officers responded to an ambulance death investigation at 37th and Western. Upon their arrival, they observed a 74-year-old person by the name of Herman Johnson down on the sidewalk on the southwest corner. The fire department pronounced him deceased at 0700. The LAPD detectives, Raquel Cruz and Armando Mendoza from the Criminal Gang Homicide Division are assigned to investigate this. They have exhausted all leads. They're asking for the public support in finding the suspect or suspects who are outstanding and basically solve this crime that shot this individual for an unknown reason. There's a $50,000 reward, and the detectives could be contacted at 213-485-4341. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let us please open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Forthwith, we're going to now move to item 24, Mr. Akala and Donna Pearman.
Current item 24, item number 24, dash 140011 dash 55 CD 14. Oh, motion Wizard Blumenfield, remember 2, relative to funding the northernmost trees to maintain and care for street trees and the surrounding areas. Well, this is long overdue since a lot of those trees are uprooting the sidewalks, and you keep coming up with studies to fix the sidewalks, but you don't fix the damn sidewalks.
No, this stay on the item.
Yeah, that's the item. The trees are breaking up the sidewalks.
Thank you. So, Donna Pearman.
Somebody needs to work with your budget, because it seems like to me that $25,000 for taking care of trees is an awful lot of money. So it seems to me that we're going with the highest bidder. It's going to figure out the most expensive way to take care of have these trees in only one little area of town. We're talking about $25,000 for trees. So when we're going through all this budget, it seems like we're not doing this correctly. In the meantime, just to end my thing, we're not having our video conferencing. You're spending $25,000 on trees.
Great, thank you. No other speakers on this item? If we can open the roll, close the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I didn't see your card.
My name, son?
Did you want to?
Trees and ordinances. How do they come together? When funding to the Northeast Trees to maintain and care for street, trees, and surrounding areas. Productive variety, that was mentioned during the discussion here under Mr. Mickey. But let's get back to this point. Council District 14 wishes for street furniture revenue funds to be allocated simply for $25,000 for relative funding for the Northeast Trees protection. Well, why don't you first of all stick to the ordinance? And that ordinance falls under ordinance number 177404. For the history of Los Angeles has been this: you kill trees, you kill trees, and you kill trees. So stop removing the damn trees that we need oxygen from. Oxygen brings bees, brings butterflies, as Mr. Corrett sits there and eats and knows better. But let's get back on topic. This ordinance 177404, and I want you to remember this: the Board of Public Works or its authorized officers employ that require conditions of grant or permit when relocation of removal of protected trees, that the permittee replace the tree within the same property boundaries no less than more than 2. So when you remove a tree, you're going to replace those trees with 2. But remember, California oaks are long gone. There were billions of them here before you settled into California and destroyed the majority of them. So do something more conscionable. Save our trees, save our sidewalks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, that completes the public comment, so we'll now go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, next item, please.
Item 18, call special for cards.
Okay. Donna, followed by William Brown.
This one's even higher. Well, this one's extremely expensive. This is $14 million, $325 for exact exemption, multi-family revenue bond for this huge apartment buildings that look like huge prisons. They put them all together. I think I saw that picture over there. Oh, yeah. I have the picture over there. And it looks like a huge prison where they put everybody together too close. Instead of having normal little houses where people can live in, they dump them all in there, and it's $14 million. So I don't really know why we need to spend $14 million or why anything needs to be built for $14 million. I don't know if we're paying for it, but $14 million is way too much money, and I have a feeling that this will not be in the good of the neighborhood, that this is I saw the picture, and it looks like a huge, great big prison with inside pools and inside tennis courts or wherever they are for high-price people that spend a lot of money on rent. In the meantime, we don't have our video conferencing for Van Nuys. Shame on you.
Okay, actually, I believe those are all the cards for public comment. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 19, call special for cards, and amending motion 19A has been circulated.
Okay, that's been circulated. So Sean, no longer here. So we'll go ahead and submit that card for the record. And that item is now before us. We'll open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
And that item will be sent forthwith without objection. Next items.
There's a request to send item 7 forthwith.
Okay, that'll be the order without objection.
Council has motions for, that brings council to general public comment.
Okay, general public comment. And if we can have these three line up. Donna, Jose Martinez, Sean is no longer here. And Herman. Please.
When you read my card, it's pronounced Ralph M. Brown Act. William Brown, as I put it on the card, 54950 to 54963. We the advocates, we the people, state do not yield our sovereignty to the agencies of this Los Angeles body of council. The agencies of Los Angeles which serve us, you, the public of Los Angeles. Ralph M. Brown Act, 54950 to 54963. We do not give our public servants, as I heard earlier in this meeting, you call yourselves public servants, then serve the public. For the right-of-ways, for accessibility, for those who are disabled, now that Mr. Huizar ran off, or he's probably, hey, Mr. Huizar. And going back to this topic, racism. I didn't appreciate your racist comment, Mr. Englander, when you made a statement that Arnold Sachs, the white gentleman, has better things to say than I do as an advocate here in Los Angeles. But my purpose is beyond that, because I am not a racist or a bigot and make comments like you did last week. And on top of that note, Mr. Dion, I'm waiting for the cure and correct or your response from the city attorney's office. Going back to this, servants, you, the public servants, must take into consideration what we decide what is good for the public to know and what is not good for us to know. Stop holding back. Put the $10 million to work, fix our sidewalks, fix our streets, fix our damn sidewalks, fix our damn streets, because that should be a priority. It is accessibility for all and not for one. Stop being bigots and racist to the community, and again, entrust with love.
Okay, this is Donna. I want to make it public. Not my President Obama, the DOT, and Eric Holder are blackmailing credit card and bank institutions from gun stores so women, minorities, and African Americans can't buy guns. Gun buyback won't give the fair market value for guns giving, hoping to disarm women, minorities, African Americans, and poor Caucasians too. We need a succession from Los Angeles is what we need, because you, how dare you not budget our Van Nuys video conferencing? We're talking about a small funding. With that, you allow easy access for San Fernando Valley to speak, especially when you cut people for 1 minute to speak, and you won't allow eating or drinking in there while people are stuffing their faces over there at the city council. And then you can cut people down to 1 minute whenever you want. It takes 2 hours to get here and 2 to 3 back. And we're at your mercy. And you want a 27-story Parker Center spending millions for office space, wasting money for a football team when we have enough sports teams. But we can't speak in Van Nuys. And I also want to talk about that my best funding source is from taxes from businesses. We get the full amount. And we don't have to share it with the state. But if the businesses don't pay, we do. And our freeway toll fees and our property taxes, sales tax, parking fees, out of the hardworking city employees. We take it away from them. What we should do is the city council should cut their salary by half. And you should take away your perks, your cars, and cut down the salaries of commissioners. That's the way we can save money and bring back video conferencing. You have no right. I've been going forever about eating. It's not right.
We, the people, you, the public servants, correct the piggy on the wall. The policeman's always telling me not to eat or drink anything here, and I see a lot of pigs around here eating and drinking. If it applies to the people, it applies to everybody. You are the damn public servants. You are not the rulers. You gotta realize that. We pay your damn salaries, and you're not worth it. Now, what do we need? We need housing. When do we need it? Now. We need changes in the real estate laws so you do not have us by the purse, strings, the nuts, whatever. At least we have the Brown Act, and we have Suma Dog that created the right for us to call you by your real names because you're not doing the proper job. Okay? City Attorney, is that your real name? I don't think so. Anyway, we the people, there are ways to provide housing for everyone without a damn landlord. Look at this last guy, the owner of the Clippers. What a racist landlord. And you saddle us with people like that? It's time to end this stupid game of real estate where the landlord can tell everybody else where to go. Every damn landlord should go straight to hell.
Jose Martinez, John Walsh. Jose, not here. John Walsh, Michael Hudson, Merv Evans.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. I'm not here to insult you or call you stupid. I'm here to say what you just saw is what I have been saying all along to the people. You can't see my face, but you can hear my voice. They can hear it all over the United States. They can hear it all over the world through the internet. Stay away from Hollywood. Stay away from this city. This city is dangerous. There is no other city in America where 3 police officers were killed in the last 60 days. 3 of them. By guns from gangs? No. By hit-and-run drivers. Drivers who were drunk on the drinks that they received in clubs and alcoholic beverage distribution that you voted for. This is a dangerous city. Stay away as you have stayed away. You will be killed. You will be raped on Hollywood Boulevard. You will be stabbed on Hollywood Boulevard. I have no choice. I'm under rent control. I'm on a pension. I have to risk this city every day, but you don't have to do it. There's a hit-and-run epidemic in this city. The blood. Now, if I were the relative of one of the police officers who was killed by a drunk driver, I would metaphorically dip my hands in the blood of my relative and splatter it all over your faces. Because when it comes, except Miss Martinez has once voted down a liquor license. None of you do. It's poison. And it's not necessary, and it's not convenient. This city is out of control. Stay away from it. Planet Earth, stay away from this city. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Hudson, Honorable Council President and Council members. As elected officials, you hold important leadership positions in our great city. You are all entrusted by your constituents to be worthy public servants and employees of the City of Los Angeles. Together with our mayor, your responsibilities and duties are many. You work tirelessly to create opportunities of growth and development for all, while carrying the responsibility of being a good steward and guardians of our rich cultural and architectural history. I come here today to voice strongly my opinion and concern that one of our oldest and most treasured cultural resources is at risk. This is the 1871 Merced Theater at El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historical Monument, which this council and our mayor thought would be an appropriate venue for a television station. Even with the best of intentions, the City of Los Angeles has been subject to many projects that have erased cultural history. As it was quoted by the National Historic Trust, historic places create connections to our heritage that help us understand our past and appreciate our triumphs. The California State Office of Historic Preservation is responsible for administering federally and state-mandated historic preservation programs to further identification, evaluation, registration, and protection of California's irreplaceable archaeological and historical resources. We really need to look over what's happening with the Merced Theater project. There has been a lot of changes done by the ITA department, and what was originally proposed is being readapted, and I do not think it is befitting of our cultural history, which we will lose if it's not carefully managed. So thank you very much for listening to me, and have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Merv Evans, Susan Rocha, followed by Sid. Yes.
Mr. Wesson, I want to thank you for your outstanding leadership in public service. You have set a national model for leadership. And I truly believe when history is recorded in Los Angeles, there will be never another person who will match your leadership and capability. Now, let me share with you, my good friends, we have recently been informed by the Department of Defense, Mr. Chuck Hagel, that there's going to be 80,000 units reduced in combat troops in the U.S. Army and another arena. The loss of military capacity means the loss of jobs. It means more people will be unemployed instead of less people unemployed. I am flatly opposed, as a veteran of the 1st and 10th Air Cav U.S. Army, to any reduction in the Army. I want to thank you for your leadership, and I want to also express concern that today is the first day of voting, and I want to strongly encourage all of our citizens to take your responsibility. We have a number of exciting candidates who are running for Board of Education. We have a number of other folks who are running for Superior Court judge, governor, et cetera, and we have one exceptionally good person who's running for Congress. Do not believe these shaky-bakey mailers that come out that look so sharp. Your best information for you is your county materials. I strongly encourage everyone to go visit lavote.info. lavote.info. Use reliable information. And let me conclude with one remark. During these turbulent times overseas, we must lead, we must provide the resources necessary to rescue those 300 Nigerian young ladies. Merv Evans, your friend. Visit the website, Merv and Evans. And once again, Mr. Wesson, you're a wonderful fellow.
Thank you. I'm going to give you another hour and 35 minutes to just say whatever you want to say. Miss Rocha.
Hi, my name is Susan Rocha, and I am a noise victim. And I'm asking you to change a law, LA Municipal Code, Chapter 11, Article 5, Section 115.02b, which gives LAPD an excuse and a reason to not cite for noise violations when it is a church. So they can practically do whatever they want, and it's up to LAPD to decide if they want to cite or it gives them an excuse not to cite. They can be as loud as they want, be a nuisance, because there's this exemption in that little code. And that one little word needs to come out, except churches. So they're not allowed to come into my house 6 times a day, every day, whenever they feel like it. Play God Bless America or whatever other music they want to play, their tape-recorded music, and there's no consequences. They can do whatever they want. There's no church functions going on. There's not a soul around, but they still feel the need to bring it into my home, and that's not fair. That law needs to change. So I'm asking you to change that law. Nobody should be above the law. Nobody.
Thank you.
And you know what? And other cities have no exemptions for churches. Other cities have prosecuted churches for noise violations. So it's not a blanket that they could do whatever they want. This has court cases on the books, case precedents. So I'm hoping that the city attorney and everyone here will support removing one word out of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Sid Masudi.
Good afternoon, Council. I hope that the subject matter that I'll be talking about is not a critique of anyone except just to bring an enlightenment to you all. On Wednesday, 4:30, at about 12:55 and between 1:30, someone departed with my sensitive attaché, which I had all the documents of the 12 months that I've been doing work here. One thing I found out by giving the report to the security is that because they saw that I was in here at 1 o'clock because we had to be back at 1:30 for the Budget Finance Committee. So I did walk out with my bag and with my plans. And the outside in the corridor, right on the left-hand side where the garbage can is, I met a reporter from Orange County, which I wanted to show him some documents. I put it on there. I showed him the documents. After that, I have no recollection what has transpired. But one thing that I want to bring, because there are a few ex-officers on the City Council for their attention and their assistance. When Mr. John at the camera system at the GST was looking at it, he said today to me that on the left side where the camera you have outside in the hallway does not see anything onto the left except only to the right. And also when there is an entrance towards the side exit, there is no camera that's watching, even though there is one up there. So I urge the City Council to pay a little bit, even though my documents were very sensitive, there's no price for it. The bag, I don't care, but it's a lot of hard work of 12 months. And whoever has it, please return it. No question asked. Just drop it at the security. I'm not here to press charges or anything. I just want those documents back. And for whatever it was, the City Council should pay a little bit more attention of security, because this is a bag. But it could be some other things that could be left in the City Hall where your cameras are not functioning correctly whatsoever. And if there are garbage cans...
Thank you, Sid. And if anybody has seen Sid's bag, please return it. It's very, very important to him. Sid, I'm sorry about that. Okay, Madam Clerk, where does that bring us on today's agendas?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
They are posted and referred.
That clears the desk.
Announcements. Announcements, members. Mr. Englander.
Thank you. Members, we've got the police memorial ceremony. This is the annual memorial of our fallen heroes. And this is going to be on May 8th at 10 o'clock. We're asking those council members to attend who haven't yet RSVP'd to do so. Harry Ito is going to take the reservations in the back to make sure that we get as many as we can to show up. Again, it's May 8th. It's going to be at the Police Administration Building across the street. And we've had a tremendous loss just this year in fallen officers, and want to make sure that not only are we there in full force to support the force that is there to support us, but that we show our respects to the ones that have come before them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more announcements? Mr. Bonin.
Yes, Mr. President, I just wanted to rise to say congratulations to Mr. Koretz, who over the weekend received the Public Policy Award from the Angeles chapter of the Sierra Club. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Mr. Laban.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Mitchell Farrell. He and I had a fun run on the Los Angeles River. Had about 600 runners. Raised some money for some local causes, but it was fun to get out on the river. And coming up on the 18th, we'll have another fun run on Miracle Mile in the Wilshire District. So it's good to get out and be active. Thank you.
Well, I just want to salute all of you. All right. Anyway, with that said, if we could all rise, all in chambers. If everyone could please rise for our adjourning motions. I'd like to go directly to Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, as an entire city of Los Angeles, our hearts ache with the tragic passing of Officer Roberto Sanchez, who tragically passed away this week in the line of duty. His life cut short by the cowardly actions of a criminal hit-and-run suspect. This past Saturday around 3:46 a.m., Harbor Division Officer Roberto Sanchez and his partner were following a traffic violator when an SUV collided with their patrol car at Anaheim Street and Senator Street in Harbor City. Los Angeles Fire personnel responded to the scene and transported Officer Sanchez and his partner to a local hospital. Officer Sanchez's partner is expected to survive his injuries. The driver of the SUV involved in the traffic collision fled the scene. Further investigation identified a person who is believed to be associated with the incident. That individual has been located and detained as a person of interest and is being interrogated by the detectives. Our heart pours to the entire LAPD family, my brothers and sisters at the Harbor Division. I've spent 6 hours at the hospital with Roberto's wife, his family, his mother, his father, his in-laws, his cousins, his aunts and uncles. I think the only thing is that's going to get through, have them get through this is their faith for God and their community of family. And the LAPD, of course, is going to help them get through this tragic loss. He leaves behind his loving wife, just married 3 months ago. Both his parents. Officer Sanchez was a 6-year veteran of the department. His past assignments include West Los Angeles area, Newton area, and Harbor area. Let's continue to put in a prayer for him and his family, the entire LAPD. Keep him in your thoughts. Funeral arrangements are pending, so that as soon as we get the information from the police department, we'll be sure to get it out to your respective offices. May Officer Roberto Sanchez rest in peace.
And we want to thank you. You represented this city, this council well, and with class, and showed that we have a heart. So we want to thank you for that, Mr. Buscaino. Mr. Labange?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And I know you work there, so how special and sad and tragic. But another officer died on the job that day also. George Nagata, right here in Central area. I think all of us have seen him. 35-year veteran, lived in the Santa Monica area, went to Venice High School, loved his work, was inspirational to his fellow officers. In fact, had an incident of a heart attack that took his life. He came back to work after having a little bump in the road recently, but he loved working. And I went to Central yesterday just to say hello and send our regards. And they always spoke how highly he was and being energetic to be there. We would see him sometime. For those of us who were in the events up in Chinatown, he was always there and doing the right thing as a Los Angeles police officer. So I ask we adjourn in memory of George Nagata, 35 years on the job. His funeral will be on the 13th of May at St. Basil's Catholic Church on Wilshire Boulevard, right near Hobart. He leaves one daughter and a son, and also his sister Loretta and his longtime friend Rose. He will be sorely missed by the officers. His first assignment was in Foothill, then transferred to Central, then to Central Traffic, where he became a motor officer in 1991. And he finished career in Central for the past 13 years as a officer. George Nagata called way too early, a heart attack on the job.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Any other adjourning motions? Mr. Englander.
One other adjourning motion, although this is unique, not for a person, but for a piece of property. This last Saturday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a devastating fire where we lost the San Fernando Valley Rescue Mission. In fact, Councilwoman Martinez was the first on scene. And we've been speaking, all the Valley Council members have been speaking throughout the weekend. It happened in Mr. Krikorian's district. The tragic loss of this facility is, and thank God there wasn't a life lost by moments, of the 30 families that were actually there that night that are displaced and homeless. 18 of them are children. Working closely with the Red Cross, it's devastating. We had a conference call yesterday with all the Valley Council members, everybody stepping up and has done a tremendous amount to help with placement of the families, with rebuilding. This was not just the main hub of the rescue mission for the Valley, the main artery and support building and facility and services for those most vulnerable in need. in our communities. This is the place that also housed all of their and stocked all of their clothing, all of their food. They lost their vehicles as well just to distribute to the families that couldn't get any food or clothing. They lost all of their vehicles. They lost everything. It was a complete loss. And so we are in mourning not only the facility, but in making sure that we rebuild and come together. We've begun doing that. We have a press conference with all Valley Council members tomorrow morning in front of the facility with the fire department, and we're asking for donations of everything. They have nothing to step up and help out.
Thank you. Thank all of you. Members, any additional adjourning motions? I do not see any. This meeting is adjourned.